the next case.
All parties in the matter of Arrington versus Boston. Step forward, please.
Massage therapist Kathleen Arrington is suing former client, retired attorney John Boston, for the cost of her services. John is countersuing for the cost of his services, defamation of character, and for an injury to his thumb.
Miss Arrington, you are a massage therapist?
Yes, I am.
And Mr. Boston is an attorney.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you practicing now, sir?
I'm almost retired. I still have a license, but I don't have any clients at this time.
Okay. Miss Arrington, according to what I've read, you and the defendant entered into a barter arrangement. You would provide him with massage therapy, and he would do some legal work for you, problem that you had with a phone company.
That's correct.
And it is your claim that you performed your part of the service.
Yes.
He did not.
That is correct.
And you are suing him for the value of your services because he didn't perform his part of the barter agreement.
That is correct.
Okay. And Mr. Boston says that you actually owe him money because he did provide services. He worked for many hours on your legal problem, and at so much an hour, he discounted it, so you owe him a lot of money. And in addition, he says that you weren't a very good massage therapist because you damaged his thumb, and he's had all kinds of problems, and he's had to go for treatment and therapy. He has his hand in a splint anyway. So this whole barter agreement didn't work out very well. When did you make this agreement, Miss Arrington, with Mr. Boston, and how did you find him?
Mr. Boston came to me for a general massage when he found that I knew how to do neuromuscular massage.
Do you advertise?
Yes, I do.
Do you have an office?
I use my home, a room in my home.
Okay. How did you find her?
Your Honor, I saw an ad in the paper, the Austin Chronicle, which said, "Enjoy a glass of wine with your massage." My regular massage therapist was out of town, so I called her, and on the 28th of December, had a massage which I paid her $130 for.
And when did you make this arrangement with regard to barter?
At the end of the second massage, on January 4th, we had been just exchanging information on both the massages about what we do and what we do in our life. And I had told him twice that I was having trouble with MCI, that I had a defective phone line. They were not giving me the refund I needed. I had lost a lot of time taken off from my jobs to be there the 26 or 27 times it took to get them out to fix the phone, which was still dead at that current time. And he suggested that we barter. He would take on the MCI problem, try and get the money back.
How much money are we talking about?
At the time, I thought about $800. Mr. Boston said that he could probably get that back, plus some money that I probably was entitled to because I had lost so much work on the 26 or 27 or 28 times they had been to my house to fix the line. So it sounded like something that he could handle. He assured me he could handle it. So the barter began, and we did the first massage in the barter arrangement on January 19th.
Okay. And how many did you do on the barter arrangement?
9 massages, 3 of them were for an hour and a half long on the barter system.
Okay. From when to when? From the 19th of January until
From the 19th of January to the last time he came in 3 times in one day on March 10th. By this time, all I wanted him to do was finish the MCI thing. He was vague about it, and I never heard from him again until he called me around March 20th. No, he sent me a letter on March 23rd saying that he liked me. I'm smart, I'm talented, I'm attractive. Then he said he didn't have time to work on my case because he says if I'm hired by cash clients, taking care of their needs comes ahead of other considerations.
Let me see the letter.
In the same thing, he also suggests an hour-for-hour swap. Not.
Can I see?
I've highlighted most of them.
So, at some point, Mr. Boston, I assume that you became interested in a more than professional relationship with the plaintiff. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, Your Honor, it is. I was divorced 2.5 years before. I was not dating anybody at the time, and I was looking for a relationship, not necessarily romantic, but just a friend. And we did a lot of things together during that time that were social and not professional on the spot.
I assume so. I assume that that's true. I mean, I've read the letter. The letter is clear that there were some discussions prior to this letter being drafted. Is that right?
I tried to keep it as professional as possible. When he refers to, he took me to dinner, he took me to a cafeteria.
Was your case settled with MCI?
No, he walked out. He never even called
Was
me.
your case ultimately settled?
Yes, they gave me credit for $200 and they disconnected my phone because they were waiting to hear from him.
Well, I don't know that. You have a letter to say that says that?
No,
Okay.
I called him.
Can I see the work that you say that you did? I want to see the work, sir.
Right.
Mr. Boston, listen to me, sir. That is your entire file on the case?
No, ma'am. There's quite a bit of all the correspondence,
assume-
but that's the work product file.
No, I'm talking about the file on the case, sir.
Those are the letters exchanged between the agencies that I corresponded with, that I talked to on the phone, the Public Utility Commission of Texas, the Better Business Bureau of Texas at the state and national level, the Attorney General's Office of the Attorney General of Texas Consumer Protection Division, and then I got the top letter that you have there from their office of the MCI.
Just a second. Just one second. What do you get for a massage?
I get $85 an hour. It depends on the type of massage I was doing on him. It's $85 an hour.
Lawyers get more. But that wasn't your arrangement.
No, it was hour for hour.
Well, your arrangement was you would do massages and you would take care of her legal problem.
Right. I did.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, at least you tried. I mean, there's no guarantee if somebody takes on your legal problem.
May I address the court, Your Honor?
I'm speaking. There's no guarantee, Ms. Arrington, if somebody takes on your legal problem, whether you pay them in barter or whether you pay them in cash, that they're going to get the result that you want. That's different from a massage. Hopefully, if you give a massage to somebody, they feel better. He says he didn't feel better. You want to get the second part of your complaint? You say that you were injured by the plaintiff.
Your Honor, it's a violation of the health and safety code, of the health code of Texas, to overtreat a massage client. Between the fourth day of February and the 12th, she did massages on my thumb. It was hurting me, and I told her. She said, I'm breaking up calcium, it's going to help. Well, it's become chronic. I've seen 4 doctors. The first one was back when I just got back from a trip to see my daughter in Seattle. That would have been early May or late April. And he said, tape it. Then I went to my general practice physician. He said, put a cast on it whenever you're not doing something that has to take the cast off, use the cast. And then I went to my orthopedic surgeon, and he examined me, and he wrote up a report of that I can submit to the court.
I'd like to see it. Mr. Boston, you don't expect me to accept this as proof that the plaintiff injured you. You have arthritis in your thumb. That's what people get, arthritis. We all have arthritis. You don't know what time he spent on the telephone finding out who to write to, speaking to someone at the Better Business Bureau, speaking to someone at the Regulatory Commission. You have no idea what that is, and there's no way for me to quantify that. Listen to me very carefully. There's no way to do that, madam. That's what happens when you have a barter arrangement. You were giving him massages, and according to you, you gave him 9 massages, and if you felt as if he wasn't doing work for you during that time, I assumed you would have stopped.
He started asking me for sex, and I didn't know how to get out of it.
You get out of it by saying, give me my file back. If that's true, you get out of it by saying, give me my file back. I want nothing more to do with you. That's what you do.
Then what do I do about the money he owes me for the massage?
You strike it and say, I made a mistake.
I brought a copy of what I did on him. I also have...
Listen to me, madam. I am not going to say what you did for him is worth more than the work he put in on your file. He did, in fact, in his capacity as an attorney, perform a service for you. The fact that you weren't totally satisfied with his service doesn't mean that you get the money back for the massages. Just like the fact that he wasn't totally satisfied with the massages that you gave him means that he gets any money back from you. Do I make myself clear? Both of you. You made a mistake. Next time, get paid for your service. Next time, get paid for your service so that you leave us out of it. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
In the matter of Gorbach versus Dagrapont. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
Mr. Gorbach, you were hired by the defendant, according to your complaint, to be Santa during Christmas season at his store or mall. Is that right, sir?
Mall.
Is this your mall? Do you own the mall?
No, I don't,
No.
Your Honor.
Well, what do you do with the mall?
I operate a photo promotions company that specializes doing Christmas and Easter promotions in shopping centers.
And how long was the Christmas season?
6 weeks.
Okay. And you claim, Mr. Gorbach, that you quit.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you received your final paycheck, you were shorted in pay. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Your defense says he gave you absolutely no notice, and that caused you some damage to your business.
Correct.
When did you start working for him, sir?
I started work on November 13th.
Did you answer an ad in the paper? Is that how you got the job?
No, I had visited the mall a number of times, and one of the photographers had called me over and told me to call Mr. Daguerre if I was interested in being a Santa Claus.
And you did?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And were your duties explained to you?
Well, the only thing we discussed was pay. I was over the phone, and he had quoted me $12 an hour pay plus overtime and a bonus at the end of the shooting in insurance.
What kind of bonus?
Well, it was dependent on the amount of money they made.
Okay, never accept a bonus based upon what somebody else tells you they're going to make.
Yeah.
That's not smart business. Okay, so you worked for a while, and what happened?
Well, when I first started working there, I kept time. In fact, I kept time the whole time I was working, the amount of hours I worked and the days that I worked. And when I got my first paycheck, I noticed that the pay was not $12 an hour, I was told. No overtime was included. It was only $8 an hour. So when I talked to Mr. Daguerre about this, he told me that I had misunderstood and that he had told me $8 an hour, but there'd be $1 an hour raise every year, and at the end of 4 years, I'd get $12 an hour.
At the end of 4 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Well, this was, an oral agreement, and I figured, well, I didn't have anything to back up on, and I was having a ball. I enjoyed being Santa Claus at the mall.
Were you
So I
working
decided-
at another job as well?
I had a couple of daycare centers that I did Santa Claus for, and I enjoyed doing that. I've been doing that for years.
Okay, but other than that, you had no regular job?
No, ma'am, I'm retired.
You retired. Okay.
So I decided, well, like I said, it's an oral agreement. I can't back him up on it.
So you decided to work
So I
for the
decided to go for the $8 an hour.
Okay.
So about 2 or 3 days later, Mr. Daguerre came up there and told me, Santa Claus is smiling too much. Quit smiling. I said, well, everything I've read about Santa Claus, he's a jolly old elf. And I enjoyed having fun with the kids and all. And being as I was having fun, I would continue doing it. But when the job quit being fun, I was going to quit. So that ended that discussion. And then I think it was the following Thursday, when I was getting ready to leave the mall, 2 of the people in the mall came to me and told me I was going to hear some very bad news the next day, that they had overheard Mr. Daguerre talking to one of the little girl photographers.
All right, well, don't tell me what anybody else told you. What happened
Right.
the next day?
Well, that Friday, Mr. Daguerre was in, and nothing. He worked there about 4 or 5 hours and left, and I didn't hear anything. But when we were closing down that night, one of the little girls called me over, the photographer called me over and said, Mr. Daguerre says he wants you to stay on the seat, the Santa Claus sled, the whole time you're here. Don't get up and go visit the children. Don't go visit the adults. That'd be taken away from time. But when we're not taking pictures, that was fun. In fact, I encouraged quite a few people to come get pictures by just going out there and visit them.
So you went out in the crowd?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I stayed within the confines. We had a little fence, and I stayed within that.
But you didn't just sit in the sled?
I didn't sit in the sled the whole time.
Okay. And this was one of his employees that told you?
Yes, ma'am.
That you were to stay in the sled and not
Yes, she said
mingle.
she was informed by Mr. Daguerre to tell me that this was the new regulation.
Okay. And you did, in fact, tell somebody that he was to stay in the sled?
As required by a contract with the shopping center.
Whatever. You did, in fact, make that
I did.
statement. I just want to make sure. So it was after that, sir, that you quit?
Yes, ma'am. I called him that night and asked him what was the reason behind this. He told me the same thing. This is a requirement of the mall. And I said, well, I told you before, when the job quit being fun, I quit. So we had a lengthy discussion, and I told him, you know, tonight's Friday, have somebody else out here Saturday.
Okay.
And I quit.
Now, when you quit, sir, on that Friday, how much were you owed?
I had 46 hours I had worked at that time, according to my schedule.
Okay, so 46 hours, and it was $8 an hour that you agreed to work for.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's $368, right?
Every day.
Okay. All right, Mr. Daguerreotype, let's hear you.
Your Honor, Mr. Gorbash is a wonderful Santa Claus, and we really enjoyed having him work for us. But he has a little problem with math. I've brought the official records that are kept by the managers in the booth, as well as a copy of how he added the hours up, and I think if you look at it, you'll see that the math is incorrect.
How many hours do you say you owed him, sir?
The last paycheck, we owed him 37.5 hours.
Okay. Did you pay him?
Yes, we did.
You did pay him?
We issued him a check, yes, ma'am.
Did you ever get a check from them for 38 hours?
37 and a half hours.
You did?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did you do with that check?
I contacted Mr. Daguerreotype, and I asked him why I was not getting paid, first of all, for the $8 an hour that I was supposed to be getting paid, and that I was shorted hours.
Just a second, you mean he paid you less than $8 an hour?
Yes, ma'am. He cut my pay to $5.15 an hour.
Did you do that?
Yes, we did.
Why did you do that, sir? That's going to cost you money.
The fact that the contract, that oral contract that we had with Mr. Gorbash was one that he had agreed to work till December 24th. But he not only didn't work to December 24th, he quit 20 days early, failed to give us any reasonable time to find a replacement, even though we begged him to. And I just felt that
unilaterally cut his pay.
I felt that he breached the contract, and I was no longer required to pay the agreed amount.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Come on, listen. I wasn't born yesterday. Being a Santa Claus at this man's age is not something that you sign on for with an annuity. You don't say, well, if you're a good Santa Claus, in 4 years, we're going to give you more money.
And later today,
you left the defendant with your father's phone card.
Right.
Your father got a whopping bill.
She made $849 worth of phone calls, plus taxes and fees, which came out to $1,015.
Big talker.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Father phone card. Sit.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Department store Santa Melvin Gorbash says promoter Don Daguerreotype owes him for work. Don says Melvin breached the contract when he didn't show up for work.
All right, I'm going to ask you this question, Mr. Daguerreotype. Mr. Gorbash, I believe, based upon what little I've seen of him, wasn't doing this job for money, necessarily, because if he was doing the job just for money, he certainly wouldn't have quit. Right?
Right.
He had a good time doing it.
I agree.
He's retired. You get a pension, sir? Or,
Yes, ma'am. I'm on medical retirement.
So he doesn't need these extra couple of bucks. Tell me about the $12 an hour that you discussed with him when you spoke on the phone. Did you ever say to him, Mr. Daguerreotype, salary is between $8 and $12 an hour?
I told him the salary was $8 an hour, yes.
You mean he's just making up the fact that $12 an hour was mentioned someplace in your conversation?
Well, I may have said that we pay Santa Clauses between $8 and $12, but
That's what I
Santa Clauses make $8.
That's what I just said, Mr. Daguerreotype.
Well, you asked me
that you pay him between $8 and $12 an hour. So he didn't get the $12 an hour out of nowhere.
Right.
Now, you did, in fact, have a conversation with him after he got his first week's pay, and he called you and said, what happened to the $12
No, he
an hour?
didn't say that.
He never called you after he got his...
He met with me personally and said...
Met with you personally. So he
where
met with
are
you...
the $10? He never mentioned 12, he mentioned 10. But he has a little problem with math, so I'm not surprised that he didn't know 10 and 12 are different numbers.
Mr. Daguerreotype, he had a conversation with you, and he said, what happened to the original, let's say, $10 an hour?
That's what he said, Your Honor.
And then you said, well, I told you that we paid between 8 and 12, and we're paying you 8?
No, I told him that the starting salary was at 8, but that I would throw in a $1 bonus if he stayed to the end as he agreed. Your Honor, I would have paid him whatever he asked if he would have stayed. In fact, this was a wonderful Santa Claus, and we did not want to lose him, and I didn't care what we had to pay him. He will hopefully remember me saying, Mr. Garbage, I was going to pay you the $10 an hour. Can't you please come to work like you agreed?
Why didn't you pay him the $10 an hour initially that you had initially discussed with him?
Because this is what we start all our Santa Clauses off.
Come on, listen, I wasn't born yesterday. Being a Santa Claus during Christmas season at this man's age, right, is not something that you sign on for with an annuity. So when you sign on for it to work for 6 weeks, you sign on for it with a certain salary. You don't say, well, if you're a good Santa Claus, in 4 years, we're going to give you more money.
I never said
he
that.
may be delivering in the North Pole in 4 years. Mr. Dagrapon,
that was never said by me, Your Honor.
I want to tell you something, Mr. Dagrapon. I find your testimony a little bit slippery, to say the least.
Well, I'm sorry
I find
to
it
hear
a little bit slippery, and I tell you that for, among other things, that you had absolutely no right, because if I believed what you said, you had absolutely no right to cut his pay unilaterally from the $8 that you said you were going to pay him to $5. You didn't have a written employment agreement with him. If you had, he would have known exactly what he was going to make, not between 8 and 12 or 8 and 10. So you decided that he had to be punished for leaving you? What'd you do with the check that they sent you, sir?
Well, I cashed it because I needed the money.
Let me see the check. Exactly what it was. Because you certainly are entitled to the difference.
Your Honor, if I may.
Just a second. The last check you sent him was for $178.36.
Right.
That was net. The gross was $193.13.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I don't like to deal with change. You don't mind if I don't deal with change, Mr. Gorback?
No, it's okay. He cut dollars. If you want to cut a couple of pennies, it's okay.
Okay. Mr. Gorback?
Yes.
Today's Christmas for you.
Thank you.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $175, which is the difference in what I consider, sir, the amount that you owe this gentleman. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Thank you. Down in Louisiana, we don't go ho, ho, ho. You go ha, ha, ha.
He's a wonderful Santa Claus, and I'm hoping that he'll work for us in the future.
I love being Santa Claus.
And now the next case.
All parties on Restelli versus Waterstrat. Step forward, please.
21-year-old student Cara Restelli is suing former friend, 21-year-old student Megan Waterstrat, for the use of an international phone card. Megan says Cara left her stranded in Europe, and the phone card was used for emergencies.
Okay, the facts of this case, I don't believe, are in dispute. You two ladies were good friends and decided to travel to Europe together.
Yes. Correct.
And sometime towards the beginning of the trip, you received word that the fiancé of a very good friend of yours had died suddenly.
Yes.
And you felt as if it was important for you to return home immediately to be with your friend.
Yes.
Okay. Where in Europe were you going?
We were traveling all around Europe, London, Italy, and we were supposed to go also to Spain and France.
How long was the trip?
It was supposed to be for 3 weeks.
How much into the trip had you received that information?
It was 9 days.
Okay. When you left the defendant with your phone card.
Correct.
That was really your father's phone card.
Right.
Yes.
Father phone card. Sit. And according to you, your father got a whopping bill.
Yeah.
The defendant's calls, and you want her to pay for those calls.
Correct.
Can I see the bill, please?
Yes. I have a list of all the phone calls she made as well as the actual phone bills. It spans over 2 months because it went from 1 month into the next.
Have you seen these?
Yes, I have. She sent them to me in the mail.
Any calls that you question?
No, I don't question any of them.
Okay. So what was the total amount of the bill that she is responsible for?
She made $849 worth of phone calls plus taxes and fees, which came out to $1,015.
Okay. There you go. Big talker.
Absolutely.
So why aren't you responsible for this bill?
Well, upon leaving, or Carol leaving Europe, she gave me the phone card for emergency calls. And in my opinion, all the phone calls I made were for emergencies. So I feel that I don't have to pay.
Well, let me understand this. She gave you the phone card because you didn't have one. Is that right?
That's correct.
And Tell me about the conversation that you had with her when she gave you the phone card.
Well, I don't really remember specifically.
Then you don't remember specifically? Then you can't help me.
Oh, I can. Well, she said, here's a phone card, so when we leave, you know, you can use a phone card in case of emergencies. And so I did tell her that I would help pay for the phone bills, but she also agreed that she would not leave me alone in Europe, and she was willing to pay $500 for a ticket home. So when she sent me this bill, like, there was a disagreement between, like, she owes me $500, but yet
What she owe you $500 for?
Because she promised she would pay for a ticket home for $500. Like,
why should she pay for your ticket home?
Because she left me in Europe. Well, as it turned out, like, she left me. It was her decision to leave me. This trip had been planned out for quite some time, and it was a major expense. And I bought a restrictive ticket and could not change the date to fly home.
You had an emergency.
Well, of course, but
just
leaving...
a second. She had an emergency.
Well, of course she had an emergency, but in my opinion, it was an emergency that I thought she should go home for.
Were you having a good time for the 9 days that you were there?
With her?
Yes.
Yes.
You having fun?
Yes.
Wasn't as if you were having a miserable time and not getting along and you dumped her. No, you were having a good time.
Yes.
And you had, I assume, planned this trip for a long time. And wanted to continue with the trip.
Yes.
But you felt as if you had a moral obligation to go home and be with your friend.
Correct.
Excuse me, Honor. I also thought she had a moral obligation to stay with me because we were halfway across the world.
How old are you?
I'm 21.
Well, if you're 21 years old, madam, nobody has to babysit for you.
Of course not, but the whole reason why I went on this trip with a friend was to have, you know, to have a company, like, to have somebody there to talk to and share the experience with. So she left. That's not fulfilling her, like, obligation to me. I mean, I went on this trip.
Well, let me ask you this question. If you lost a member of your family, if you received word that a member of your family died while you were 9 days into the trip, do you think it would have been the right thing for you to do to go home?
With my friend, yes, and I would pay for her ticket home also.
Baloney. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,015. Grow up!
Now, this is case number 271 on the calendar in the matter of Rochelle versus Martin.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Judge. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Folks, have a seat.
Ms. Rochelle, you were the caregiver for the defendant's grandmother.
Yes, ma'am.
Who passed away on the 31st?
24th of January.
24th of January. It is your claim that the defendant slandered you by claiming that you took some money that you shouldn't have, that was her grandmother's money.
Yes.
I think that was in Social Security checks, that because she said that you had taken those checks and you weren't authorized to at that time, the money was taken out of your account, causing other checks that you wrote to bounce. So what you're suing her for is $5,000 for the aggravation that you had and the bounce check fees, etc., and also for slandering you.
Yes.
Ms. Martin is going to explain to me what happened. She says that this whole thing is really about an insurance policy that you had on the life of her grandmother, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let me try to place this in perspective. Okay. Ms. Rochelle, when did you start to act as the caregiver for Miss Martin's grandmother?
In May of 1999.
What was wrong with her grandmother?
She couldn't walk very well due to rheumatoid arthritis, and she's a diabetic also, so she didn't get around very well.
Was your grandfather alive at the time?
In 99, yes, he was.
So were you caring for both of them?
I cared for him also, yes.
Were you living in or just?
Yes, I was to live in.
Who hired you?
I wasn't really hired. I come here, they were my godparents. I moved here from Kansas City because I was here in December prior to May of 1999.
Oh, so you knew that they were your
godparents?
Yes, I knew them. I didn't realize that.
So when I got there in December, saw what condition they were living in. I mean, adults, people shouldn't have to live like that. So when I went back home, I couldn't rest, so I came back out to try to get their home and get them in living condition, and I was going to go back home. I figured everybody else would take care of them. It didn't happen, so I was here till they both died.
So your grandfather died first?
Yes, he had Alzheimer's and other conditions.
So he had Alzheimer's?
Yes.
But not her grandmother?
No.
She just had physical problems.
Physical problems. She was very strong mentally.
Okay. And it was agreed that the Social Security checks were to be direct deposited into your account.
Well, it was agreed that that's how she would pay me, yes.
So she was paying you?
Yeah, the last year, the first 2 years I worked for, took care of her and Mrs. Spivey with no pay.
How much was she paying you?
June of 2002, she started paying me $1,100 a month. But prior to that, she wasn't paying me anything.
Oh, just a second. Now, was that $1,100 her Social Security check?
Yes.
Now, when did you leave the employ of, what was your grandmother's name?
Mrs. Alberta Spivey.
When did you leave Miss Spivey's employ?
I came home one Friday evening and she explained to me that Monday, which would be the 28th, that she would be going to the hospital and from there to a nursing home.
Okay. Now, that you claim that she told somebody at the bank that you had stolen money or taken money. What money?
I have an affidavit with a check that Miss Martin accused me of stealing, which was a check that I received every month for Mrs. Spivey. For Mrs. Spivey.
What month?
November 1st.
Well, you weren't in her employ in November.
But she still expected me to take care of her. I was her sole provider.
No. She left on October 28th. November
Yes.
1st. You got the check. It should have been returned. Is that the check we're talking about?
The arrangement we made was that when Mrs. Spivey came to me in April of 2002, she didn't pay me for April. So when she left, by her not giving me a 30-day notice, I was supposed to keep November's payment also. That's the arrangement we made.
That's hearsay, madam. If she left your home on October 28th,
okay,
and if Miss Martin complained that you had taken November's check and appropriated it for yourself, and it was a Social Security check, then she didn't slander you. Is that the check you're complaining about?
Well, Mrs. Martin had no arrangement with Mrs. Spivey's and I arrangement, you know. I mean, there's no written document saying I get this every month, I do that. You know, I cast a check, she'll give me what she wanted.
Well, if there's no written document, then you can't take her Social Security. Her Social Security goes to her. So if that's what you're complaining about, Miss Rochelle, your complaint is falling on deaf ears. She says that this is all about an insurance policy, and I'm sort of curious about that insurance policy. When did Miss Spivey take out an insurance policy naming you as beneficiary?
She had the insurance policy in 2001, but when she came to live with me, she complained the whole time. We talked previously on the phone.
Just answer my questions. You can't tell me what she said to me. She's not here.
August, I believe, of 2002.
August of 2002, she changed the insurance policy, making you the beneficiary.
Yes.
Who had previously been the beneficiary?
Her daughter in Topeka, Kansas.
And where did she go when she changed the insurance policy? Did she go to somebody's office, or did somebody come to her?
The insurance agent, which is present here in the court, he came to our home and took out the policy.
Who's the insurance agent?
Mr. Harvey.
Step up, please. Your last name is Harvey?
Yes. May I interject for a moment, sir?
Yes.
The insurance policy prior to August 20th had lapsed. So a new application was issued August 20th, 2002, and this is the application to which plaintiff is referring.
So in August, when you came to the house, sir, she did not have insurance.
Correct.
Had you been Miss Spivey's insurance agent previously on the old policy?
No.
And when you came to the house, you wrote up another insurance policy and named a different beneficiary. Is that correct?
Well, I
Is
don't
that
know.
correct? That you wrote up another policy with a new beneficiary?
Correct.
So just answer my question.
Well, I didn't know who the first beneficiary was.
Who determined, Ms. Martin, that the signature on this new policy was not your grandmother's signature?
The policy issued in August 20th, 2002 is her signature. The policy was amended in November. That is the signature my mother and I have disputed with Guarantee Life Insurance. That is not her signature.
What do you mean the policy was amended in November?
Okay.
Was the policy amended in November?
It was increased.
From what to what?
10 to 15,000.
November what?
About mid-month.
I have the
Who
exact
called
date, Your
you
Honor.
to increase the policy?
Miss Rochelle.
Miss Rochelle, who is no longer taking care of Miss Spivey. Is that right?
I was taking care of Miss Spivey. I was running back and forth to the nursing home taking care of her. Yes, I was.
On November 8th, she was not in the nursing home. She was at Brotman Medical Center.
Well, I was out there also. Records can show that, too.
But also, Your Honor, this policy is a joint whole life policy with my uncle and my grandmother. My uncle was incarcerated through at least January 19th, 2003. His signature also appears on both applications. I don't see how that's possible.
I don't know either, but are you still in litigation with regard to that second policy?
We were told by Guarantee that the policy would not be paid.
And it has not been paid, is that right?
Yes.
Judge Judy will continue in a moment. And later today,
he just all of a sudden started shaking the car, pushing it back and forth. Then he just swan dives on top of my roof. And I said, I'm gonna call the cops. He says, you want me off your car? Come down here and make me get off your car.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Caregiver Dorothy Rochelle claims her deceased client's granddaughter, Joyce Martin, falsely accused her of stealing. Joyce says Dorothy took out a life insurance policy on her grandmother.
All right, not so hard. Miss Rochelle, you had no right to keep in your account Miss Spivey's Social Security check for the month of November of 2002. You were no longer taking care of her. The $1,100 was to provide for her care. She was either in a hospital or she was in a nursing home during the month of November. Both of those facilities were entitled to a piece of her Social Security check, not you. Ms. Martin.
Yes, ma'am.
She has a very simplistic lawsuit here. Her lawsuit says that you accused her of stealing money, of using money that she wasn't entitled to.
Correct.
And I've just told her that she wasn't entitled to that money that she had in her bank account. Okay. And that if, because of your complaint, that money was withdrawn from her bank account and she suffered damages because other checks bounced, that's too bad.
That's correct.
Too bad. She had no right to keep that money. It was a Social Security check. I've answered you. You had no right to keep the money. You may disagree with me. That's your problem. Your case is dismissed. Goodbye. Good luck.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I took care of this woman's grandmother and grandfather for 4 years. She was too good to take care of them.
The package I brought with me today are the remains of my grandmother.
For abuse and slashing her tire.
Order. All rise. Quiet in the courtroom, please. Quiet in the courtroom. Thank you. Your Honor, this is case number 334 on the calendar in the matter of Gaines versus Gaines. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat. Ma'am, please.
Mr. and Mrs. Gaines, you've been married for 16 years. According to your papers, you are in the process of divorcing. You have children together. How many children do you have?
2.
How old are they?
12 and 17.
You are suing your wife, sir, because you say that she sold some of the tools of your trade.
Yes.
After you left the house.
Yes.
What tools do you say she sold?
She sold a generator, a wet and dry vacuum, and an air compressor.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a carpenter, construction.
Now, when did you leave the house, sir? What year?
97, I believe it was.
What month in 97?
I don't know, February, January. I'm not sure of the month. Exactly.
I guarantee you she knows it to the practically the second. When did he leave the house?
July 31st, 97.
Women always know.
That's right.
July 31st, 97?
Yes.
Order.
And when did you go back for all this stuff?
Maybe I was coming in and out in that house, like living there sometime. And then we get into it, I'd be put out, the police come. So actually, it's hard to say. I know when I did actually went to get it out of like 7/10 of 98, I know that's when I pursued to go over there with the police officer. And when I went to go get it with the police officer, she told the police officer she didn't want to deal with that right now. So after that, I had to leave because there was a restraining order against me. But I went at first I used to try to go over there and get it without the police officer. But and then when I would go over there, she would say to me that, well, sometimes you're just trying to be nice because you're trying to get your belongings. Which, that's what it was. I was trying to get my belongings.
Smart. You're smart. Shh.
So, so that didn't work. So being that didn't work, I kept maybe giving her money, kept going. We done, how can I say this?
Was he coming back and forth during that year?
He was coming to visit the kids, take them to church and stuff like that. I asked him to take the tools out of my garage. So
when did you ask him to take the stuff?
About a month or two after he left.
Okay, so
and then I said,
a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago. I said, well, won't you come get your stuff? I have nowhere to put them.
You remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
Go ahead.
He said he had nowhere to put them, so I said, fine. So they stayed there for a while, and eventually I needed some money, and I sold the tools to pay some bills and buy some food. And then when I told him about it, he said, okay, that's fine, I understand. Now I'm here being sued because
When
he
did you
doesn't
tell him that
understand.
you had sold the tools?
I told him I sold the tools in August.
August of 98.
98.
She told me the reason she sold the tools is because she was getting evicted, not because food and bills. She said, I was getting evicted. That's why I sold the tools. Matter of fact, I believe it's down. Oh, okay.
She said she was getting evicted because she didn't pay rent.
That's a bill, right?
That's a bill.
That's what I thought.
Now, my question to
Okay,
you,
well,
Mr. Gaines.
I was just saying her words was she said she was getting evicted to make me feel like, well, that's okay that you sold that. Because I would feel like, oh, well, the kids, I don't want them out in the street.
Okay, now, Mr. Gaines,
Well, I'm just telling you the way I felt about that. Okay.
One of the things that your wife says, and you seem to acknowledge in your complaint, is that you stopped paying child support. You stopped giving her money.
No.
Just let me read what it
Okay.
says. It says, my children are very important to me, and when I stopped giving her money, I gave only for my daughters. She got mad and said I couldn't see them until the year 2000. So there came a time when you stopped giving her money.
I never stopped giving her money.
Are you under a court order to pay her a certain amount of support?
Yes.
How much?
I believe, because I have other kids, I believe it's like $6 something, but I think the court, it says on the paper $800 and something, $804 a month.
Well, the fact that you don't know how much you're supposed to give her every month, sir, suggests to me that you don't write this check out religiously.
Well,
because I guarantee you this, most men and women who pay child support or a bill, like rent, they know their rent is $432.64. Their mortgage payment is $1,375. So if you wrote this check out every month for the last year, you would know exactly what your child support is. So there came a time when you were not paying.
They automatic takes it out of my check. I don't have to write a check. It automatic comes from my check, and my check stubs is right here, if you would like to see.
I sure would.
Even when I'm on unemployment, they takes it out. So I don't have to.
How many children do you have altogether?
4.
Well, do they take out for which children from your check?
Well, she, I believe, actually the only one asking for child support.
What do you mean you believe?
Well, for a fact, her and I have a 20-year-old daughter that I might be paying some back pay on that. But the other daughter, the girl works, she didn't go at child support.
All it says here is they take out $204 for support.
Right.
Do you get that money?
$204 a week. I got that for about up until, I think the last check was the end of September or something like that, because he quit his job.
No, I lost my job from dealing with her for as believing that she was like, we were still like talking. Like I said, I was still going over there, spending the night. And then one night I happened to catch her with her and her friend. And I said, she's not getting no more money. I'm not going to take care of you and your friend.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Did you slash her tires?
No.
Did you get somebody else to do it?
No.
But you broke a window?
No.
Come on. Fess up.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Eugene Gaines is suing his estranged wife, Marquita Gaines, for his tools. Marquita is suing Eugene for a broken window, slashed tire, and stress.
I assume that all of the marital property will be resolved in the course of your divorce proceeding. You must have certain things in the house, furniture, appliances, and all that other kind of stuff. You're in the process of divorcing now. That stuff is going to be separated and cut in half. When did you buy this stuff, this wet, dry vac air compressor generator?
It's been about a year. For the generator, but the wet and dry vac, I think it's like the air compressor. I think I had it for maybe 2 or 3 years, or maybe even longer. I'm not sure exactly.
But you bought it during the course of the marriage?
Yes.
Well, you've been married 16 years. None of the stuff was 16 years old.
Yes.
So, in this jurisdiction, all that stuff is part of marital property. So she sold it, and she may be required to pay you half of the value of the property. How much did you get for it?
All together, about $900.
What do you mean about $900?
I sold one for, like, one item I sold for $150, another item I sold for about $600, another item about $200.
You want to show me something?
Yeah, I want to show you what I paid for just the air compressor alone that she got only $900 for. And here's the receipts to what the generator and the, here's the receipt for the generator. That's the generator there. And here's the receipts for the air compressor and the wet and dry vac.
Sir, listen to me. You listed in your complaint, generator $800. As it turns out here, it's $699. So it's $100 less than what you said in your complaint, right? Then you have something listed, a wet and dry vac for $140 is your receipt, right?
Right.
And you listed $150 for that in your complaint. So far we're down $110.
Okay.
Right? Then you list the air compressor, $354. As a matter of fact, that was $309. Right?
Right.
Okay. So she's not far off. She sold it. You list the whole thing as $1,300. You take off a couple $100 that you padded on your complaint.
No, it's not that I did pad
that you should
it.
listen to me. That you padded on your complaint, and it comes down to $1,100 that you paid for it. She sold it for $900. I think she got a pretty good deal. This was all used equipment, so half of that is $450. Now you have a cross complaint.
Yeah.
Let's deal with your cross complaint. Say he broke the kitchen window in your house. Cost you $55.80 to fix it. How did he break the window?
He broke the window with a pole or a brick. I'm not sure what he broke it with because I wasn't at home when he broke it.
Well, who saw him break it?
He told me he broke it. I asked him,
No,
why
it's
did
a
he break
lie.
him?
I did not
asked him, why did he break my
right.
window? He said, I thought you was with another man.
When was this?
This was in September or the end of August,
of '98?
Yeah.
And when did you have this conversation with him?
Over the phone that same night.
You called him or he called you?
He called me.
And what'd he say?
I thought you was with another man because you said you were going to take the kids somewhere because you left so fast and you were so nice to me. I was trying to get him away from my house because I was sick and tired of him. And so he left. He came there that morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, threatening me he wanted to come in and talk. I said no. He started picking up leaves and raking grass and doing all kind of stuff. He threw his keys on the top of my roof and said he was going to get me back one way or another, get the divorce, and going through all this stuff about what he didn't want, what he wanted.
Okay,
and
what about the slashed tires?
There was a police report about the slashed tire. The first time, because this happened twice, the first time he let the air out of the tires. And he told me, well, I'm sorry, I was mad at you, because he asked me to move back home, and I said no. And so he said, well, I said, why'd you cut my tires or let the air out of my tires? Well, I don't hate you, because if I did, I would have cut your tires. And I said, yeah, fine. I had to have AAA come put air in my tires. Then, about a couple of weeks later, when he got upset about something else happened, he apparently either had somebody puncture my tire or he did it himself.
How do you know he did it? I mean, other than the fact that you think he did it.
Other than the fact that he told me did it is the statement he made before saying that if he hated me, this is what he would have done.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the question. I know the answer. Did you slash your tires?
No.
Did you get somebody else to do it?
No.
But you broke a window.
No.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You broke a window. I believe her when she said you had that conversation with her right after the window was broken. I believe her.
No. Oh, okay, go down.
I believe her. Come on.
Well.
Fess up.
No, I didn't break the window.
Well, maybe you had somebody else you were
I didn't
with
break the window. I can say
So
that. I didn't break the window.
You personally
did not break the window.
You personally did not break the
Thank
window.
you.
Just a second. Just a second.
Okay.
Listen, did you hear what he's saying? He personally, with his own hand, did not break the window.
I understand that.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Your tools were not your tools. Your tools
My
were marital tools. Marital tools, sir.
Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. Eugene Gaines is suing his estranged wife, Marquita Gaines, for selling his tools. Marquita admits to selling some of the tools, but says he doesn't pay support.
He's charged for the window. How much did it cost you to fix the window?
$55, and 80 cents.
Okay.
So what's with the with her being able to say, can I, like, showing you all the money that I did give her for is, like, when she said, like, the restraining order saying for me not to come over, when I went over there with the police, have my witness right here, when I went over and tried to get my air compressor out the garage, well, when I tried to get my belongings out the garage with the police, she said she didn't want to deal with that right now, but she had a restraining order. I did it every way that possible.
Mr. Gaines, listen to me very carefully. You're not following what I'm saying, sir. What I'm saying to you is I am charging her for half of your property because your tools were not your tools. Your tools were marital tools. Marital tools, sir. Just because she's the one that uses the microwave in the house doesn't mean that microwave isn't marital property. And just because she may be the only one that uses the stove, that doesn't mean it's not marital property.
Okay,
your tools were purchased during the course of your marriage and therefore are marital property. She sold them. She's being charged for half of them, $450, from which I am deducting $55 for the window that got broken. Now, the only other part of your lawsuit that I am probably going to dismiss summarily, Mrs. Gaines, is you are suing him in addition to the window, etc., and the tire, which you have no proof that he actually broke, that he actually slashed. You're suing him for $2,000 for stress. Listen, if we allowed those kinds of suits in matrimonial actions for stress, we would have courts running 24 hours a day. That's why people get divorced.
Thank you.
You understand?
Yes.
Now, do you think you suffered any stress that was different from most people's stress when they decide to get divorced?
Yes, I do.
Well, let me hear about it. Who are you?
I'm her mother.
Betty.
And I'm a witness to some of the events.
She's going to tell me the worst part. Sit down. And then
Okay.
Just why don't you sit
Right.
down? Go ahead.
When I have to leave my job because he's calling, harassing, threatening, breaking in my home, and doing all these things, and I can't leave to come to work because he's let air out of my tires, you know, that, besides that, wasting 16 years of my life with this man, you know, was not even enough.
Ms. Gaines, let me tell you this.
Laugh at that.
Everybody who gets divorced, who's been married for a decade, almost 2 decades, says, why did I waste my time with this guy? The best 16 years, I looked my best, I was my freshest, my skin was the best, my figure was my best, and I wasted it on this schlemiel, right? You understand?
Yes.
Most women who get divorced say that, and the reason that they say that they wasted their time, and stop fidgeting!
Okay.
The reason that men don't say that is because they can usually, I don't know, how old are you?
38.
38. They're 38 years old. When they're 40, when they're 45, they're still going to be able to find some young chippy who's going to find them attractive, right?
Yep.
Unfortunately, women are not in the same kind of position. It's just the way things are. Right. I'm working to change that.
Judge Judy is ready to rule. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
The truth of the matter is, he's going to go out and make another couple of babies, right? And have a whole new family. Right. He's standing there saying, right, that sounds good to me. You don't get paid for that. What you do is you get smart. You get smart. You get out, you get smart, and you just move on with it.
Exactly.
So, good. $450 is what you're going to get for your wet vac. Less $55 for the window that you broke. It's $395. Is that right?
That's right.
Perfect. That's all.
Parties are excused. Step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Out the back door to your right, please.
And on the next Judge Judy.
Oh, he just told a bunch of lies, but that's okay, because I'm going to move on just like Judge Judy said.
What kills me, though, is when somebody says, for 16 years of wasting their life with my marriage, well, why when I go to Martinez that she always go to the restraining order side, but don't go to the side where you get a divorce.
I don't know. I have no idea. You know, I really don't know.
I'm the one pushing the divorce now. That's the reason she's getting papers to go to get a divorce, because I push the divorce. Because I don't want to be married to nobody like that no more. I didn't realize how sick that woman is. Anytime you're going to sit there and tell me $2,000 for stress, the whole world is stressed. Well, I mean, that is so crazy.
That's ridiculous.
I just think God is over.
Well, I witnessed him being outside the house trying to get in because the police told me that's what he was trying to do, and they asked me, did he live there? And I said no, and they said, well, he said he lives here, and they found out that he didn't.
She's a greedy, money
hungry snake. That's it.
She is.
Let's
She's
go.
greedy, hungry. I've never seen a woman that gonna sit there and try to say for 16 years, wasted her life. How in the hell you gonna stay in something 16 years and you'll figure your life wasted? That damn money kept you there. Something kept you there. 16, you can't figure, it took you 16 years to figure out this is wasted? Well, listen how that sounds. That sounds like somebody having problems upstairs.
They need to get rid of these old crazy husbands they got, if they got any.
I'm happy today. I'm glad. I'm so happy.
On the calendar in the matter of Cruz versus Debo. Parties have been sworn in. Judge, you may be seated. Gentlemen, have seats.
Mrs. Cruz, you are suing really on behalf of your two sons.
Yes, ma'am.
Which two sons? These are your three boys?
Yes, ma'am.
Which two boys were involved in this incident?
James and Jared.
Who's James?
Eric.
You claimed that your sons were falsely accused of assault by the defendant, as a result of which they were arrested. They were held briefly in jail. You were forced to hire a lawyer at a substantial cost. Mrs. Debo, on behalf of herself and her son, say that your two boys were the aggressors in this incident, and they had substantial medical bills as a result of the assault, and they are counterclaiming. Now, you weren't involved in this incident. You were not present.
Right.
So you are relying on what your sons told you.
Right.
So why don't you have a seat, and why don't these two young men step up here, please? Both of you were present at this incident.
Yes, I am.
Is that right? What is your name?
Steve.
Who's going to speak for the group first?
I will.
You're Jared.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Jared. Why don't you tell me how this happened?
From the start.
From the start.
Okay, well, me and my brother were going to pick up one of my friends. We were going to go play volleyball.
And you were driving?
He was driving.
Okay, go ahead.
We were driving down the highway, and we come up on him, and we noticed that he was swerving back and forth. You know, no big deal. And then we exited off the highway, you know, to go pick up one of my buddies. Well, he went off first.
Try looking at me all the time.
He exited off the highway first, and then we followed behind him. I guess he thought we cut him off or whatever, because we just kept going. And we went through the stoplight. It was green. We didn't have to stop. We went ahead and made a left. Well, he cut us off and then stopped in the middle of the highway for no reason. Jumps out of his car and then starts yelling at me and my brother, saying he wants to fight. Well, you know, we told him we didn't want to fight and everything. He went over to my brother. I jumped out of the car, and when we were going to go work things out, he kicked me in the chest. After that, me and James, my brother, started hitting him and beating him up.
So there came a point when the two of you were fighting with Steve.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you got back into your car.
Yes, ma'am.
And drove off.
Yes, ma'am.
And then what happened?
At that point, Stephen's mother, as we were driving off, jumped on the vehicle and...
well, where did she come from?
That's not...
Shh, 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 shh. Where did she come from?
I don't know.
You
She
don't know.
showed up at the end, right after we had just got done fighting, we were leaving.
And what happened when his mother showed up?
She jumped on James's vehicle and was yelling at James, telling him to stop, was clawing at him and everything, so James stopped. We jumped out of the car, and then Stephen come out of nowhere and hit me in the mouth, you know, and after that, that's when me and my brother got in the car and left.
And then what happened?
We stopped at the gas station and cleaned up a little bit and, you know, pumped gas and everything in it. So after that, the cops showed up there, and then they arrested me and my brother.
At the gas station?
Yes, ma'am. After that, they arrested me and my brother. They took him to a different place than I. He had to stay in jail, and I had to go to an institute.
He went to jail, why?
For assault and battery charge and assault with a deadly weapon.
Just a minute. And what were you arrested for?
2 counts of assault and battery.
What was the deadly weapon?
Okay, they as we were driving, we were parked behind him. Not actually parked. We were forced to stop him to the curb, and because he stopped in front of us and made us stop, and then as we
would you answer my question? What was the deadly weapon that you were arrested for?
My truck.
Your truck?
Yeah.
How long did you spend in jail?
He stayed a night in jail. I had to stay in the institute for about 4 hours.
And there was an attorney hired by your family?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what happened with the case?
All the charges were dropped.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Stephen.
Yes, ma'am.
You, according to your answer, were on your way home or on your way going to a store where you work, a family business.
Yes.
And you were driving in one car with your sister.
Yes, ma'am.
How old is your sister?
16.
And what I gather from this, your mother was following you.
We were following my mother.
Okay. Now, why don't you tell me your version of what transpired?
We were just driving home, and out of nowhere, I was in the right lane. My mother was in the left lane. We were about a car length apart, and their truck, I guess, was trying to pass my mother in the right lane. And I avoided a collision because when they swerved over, we were pretty close. Well, when I had stopped, I slowed down. The truck swerved back over, and they started pacing me. And that's when...
What do you mean?
Or side by side, and the passenger was yelling out the window and giving hand gestures, and I rolled the window down, and we both basically had a shouting match, and my turn was coming up, so I just blew him off and got in front of him, took the left turn, and here they come.
Okay, so you passed him?
Yes, before the turn.
Now, where was your mother?
She went through the intersection.
Just a second. If you were following your mother, she went straight and you were making a left turn?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, then you weren't going to be following her anymore.
Well, we were both going home, but me and my sister had to stop at another store to do some errands. So we were going to meet my mom at home anyway.
Okay. What happened when you made the left?
I guess they were looking for trouble because it could have stopped when I took the left turn because they came around the corner and basically was following me.
Okay, so they were following you, and what happened?
And I basically brake checked them.
You brake checked them. When you say brake check them, which means you put on the brake.
Put on the brakes. They could have went around. It was a 2-lane going our way, and they didn't. So I slowed down to 5 miles an hour, and then I stopped. Before I get out of the car, both of them were out of their truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I got out of the car, and I was the one that's what's the problem. And that's when me and the passenger started fighting.
So, okay, so that's your first mistake, both of you.
Yes.
I can sort of see it. Playing hopscotch with cars, and then you both got annoyed with each other and made some profanity back and forth. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you stopped your car.
Yes.
That's dumb,
Yes.
right?
Yes, Your Honor.
And then you both got out of your cars, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Second dumb. And then the two of you started to fight, right?
Yes, it was basically 2 brothers against me, 2 against 1.
Well, not initially. Initially, it was just the 2 of you. That's what you told me, Stephen, right?
Yeah, that's how
you
it
got out,
started.
you got out. But then the brother got out. And then the 2 of them were fighting with you.
Yes.
Now, according to your mother's answer and your answer, you were injured.
Yes.
Tell me about your injuries.
Well, I was on the ground, and I guess I got kicked in the head, and my skin split, my forehead split, and I was bleeding pretty badly. After the incident, I went to the hospital and got medical attention and 8 or 9 staples, and it's healing up. I guess it's healed by now.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
She understands that her son was stupid to stop the truck. You don't think your boys were stupid. Stupid!
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Carolyn Cruz claims her sons, James and Jared, were falsely charged with assault by Tina Debo and her son Stephen after a driving incident. The Debos are countersuing for medical bills.
Now, Miss Debo.
Yes.
How were you assaulted?
When I got there parked, that's my kid. I ran, stop. Then I didn't do nothing to them. All I wants to get after my boy. He ought to know better. That's dumb. And I go, Steve. Then next thing he was holding, and all day dog just kick. That time I couldn't see what you want. More I got close, it was one of my kids. And I hold my son. This is so crazy. They there, you guys was there. That's first thing I say. And he goes, Mom, and all I see blood. And all I did, oh my God, quit. Then I told this boy, stop. But I could understand when I couldn't fight in the middle, they or steam, whatever, I'm gonna get hit. I'm not complaining that. I cut in the middle, all I did holding my boy. Oh my God.
So are you telling me that when you got in the middle of these two boys on your son, they didn't stop?
And I looked straight in the eye. This is enough. You guys gotta be better than this. This is not an animal. Once bleeding to death and stop, then I don't know which one, you or you, say who you, next thing, drop right on here and go like this.
So somebody hit you in the face?
Yes. No. Then I told my daughter, Lisa, get the pencil and paper, this is enough. Get their tag number. Steve, let's go. That's what happened.
Your Honor.
Yes.
As I broke them two up as they were fighting.
Which two?
Them two. And
are you going to tell me that you didn't throw any punches at this young man?
No.
No, you were punching him.
That is your brother.
Yeah.
You were punching him.
In defense, yeah. We defended ourselves, and I'm like, let's just go. We don't need to be fighting. Let's leave this alone. So I tell Jared to get in the truck. So we get in the truck, and we slowly back up. And of course, there's cars around, so I'm not able to hardly go anywhere. So I slowly start taking off, and that's when she shows up. She jumps on my truck and tells me to stop. I'm scared of her. I don't even open up that door. I stop and I don't even open up the door. I crawl over to the other side.
Are you telling me that nobody hit her in the face?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we're saying.
Did somebody hit you in the face?
Not only hitting, man. When I tried to get there, I said, don't you guys have a mother? This is crazy. None of them stopped. You both went crazy. All I could do is just leave my boy alone. Let us go.
Your boy
get there.
Hey, listen to me. You weren't there, right?
Right.
Good. So let's see what we have here. Now you can stand up with your boys.
Thank you.
And I still have a scar. Whatever you boy kicked me, pull my hair through the truck. It's not.
No, listen, Miss Cruz, listen to me. You weren't there.
I wasn't.
Right.
But my sons have a record for the rest of their life, a felony record, that they won't be able to get a job for because this mother was not there either.
Just a second. No, you're wrong, Miss Cruz. You're wrong, Miss Cruz. You're absolutely. She was there.
At the end.
I don't care if it's the middle or the beginning of the end. She was there. She was there. And I believe her when she says she was assaulted. Oh, I believe her when she says she was assaulted. There are certain things that are not in dispute. It's not in dispute that these three young men engaged in a very juvenile activity while
But he's not a juvenile.
I want to tell you something. You keep protecting these two young boys, they're not just going to have a felony record from their past, they're going to have a felony record in their future. You know, you're supposed to think common sense. And you're suing them. They didn't bring suit against you. They're counterclaiming because you sued them. My sense is from reading their answer, she understands that her son was stupid to stop the truck. You don't think your boys were stupid. Stupid!
And man...
Just a second. Hey! Stupid! And they brought this on, the three of them, themselves. You don't think that they have any fault in this. How do you... Who spoke? Who? Out! You related to this case? Yes. Out! You don't speak out in my courtroom. Because I tell you this, Miss Cruz, If one of your sons was in a truck and there were two of them, I guarantee you'd be screaming and ranting and raving like a lunatic. So you seem to feel as if your boys were innocent victims here. They were not. The three of them are guilty of acting stupid.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
This was a case of three stupid people who got involved with road rage.
Dumb.
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 Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. Carolyn Cruz charges her sons James and Jared were falsely arrested after a driving incident involving Tina Debo and her son Stephen.
My sense is, common sense suggests to me that he's not going to start up with your boys with his mother a car length away and his 16-year-old sister sitting in the car. But whoever started this stupidity, he ended up hospitalized. Not them. 2 against 1. So where you get the nerve to sue them because your boys are going to have a felony record, I have no clue. If that's what it is, that's what it is. Next time you're behind the wheel of a car, you won't stop the car. If what you say is true, you'll just keep going. Right?
Yes.
Good. Now, it's clear to me that there was a time during the course of this interaction that the two of you were assaulting him. That's not a fair fight.
He said he can take on both of us.
Just a second. You're telling me now that this man, he said to you, come on, I can take on both of you.
Yeah, he jumps out the car, and then first we were going to settle things out. And then
just
he's
a minute.
like,
So what you're telling me now, Jared, is that you got out of the car, and you you were calm, and you just said, what's the problem? We're going to settle this out. Right?
Yeah, I was asking him what the problem was, because I don't understand why he stopped in the middle of the road to fight us.
Just a second. Why did you stop your car?
Because we had to stop. We'd run in the back of him.
Oh, no. Are you telling me?
Yes.
Just listen to me. Are you telling me now that you could not have gotten around him?
He slammed on his brakes in front of the 2 lanes, in the middle of it.
So that would have made you concerned, wouldn't it?
Just
a second. Would that have made you concerned?
Yes.
Let's assume that that's true. That he was acting irrationally?
Yes.
Why did you get out of your car?
He got out. He stopped in front of us, jumped out of his car, wanting to fight us, and then I was going to jump. I jumped out with James to ask him what his problem was.
Is it okay that he turns when he's not supposed to turn?
I'm telling you that there are 3 dumb people here. You seem to think that there's only one.
Wouldn't have happened if he hadn't done it.
Assuming what you say is correct, Miss Cruz, assuming that they made a left turn, he followed them, he cut them off.
No,
I know you say it's not true, but assuming that what you say is true, they both got out of the car and beat him up.
Well, we didn't force him to throw the first
punch. It was all self-defense.
The detective
We didn't force him to.
did a full investigation when this was all over with.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
found out what?
He found out that they lied.
No, that's not what they found out.
What?
No.
That's what he told me.
No. First, A, I don't believe you that that's what he told you. But B, what he found out is that this was a case of 3 stupid people who got involved with road rage.
He should never got out of the car.
Absolutely
Dumb.
correct. Dumb.
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 Judge Judy continues in a moment. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
You don't seem to think, Miss Cruz, that your boys did anything wrong. And you're wrong.
And that's wrong, man.
Hey, listen. You spent $2,500 on a lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
You spent a couple of $1,000s on medical bills?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Sounds to me as if you both had a good lesson. That if you're involved with somebody on the road that seems to be acting in an irrational manner, whether it's you or whether it's him, you keep on going. And you don't get out of the car and say to somebody who seems to be, according to you, acting irrationally, hey, let's try to settle this in a reasonable fashion. Because I don't believe that's what happened. I don't believe that's what happened. And These two mothers weren't there at the beginning. All I know is there were two of you, there was one of him, and he ended up getting 8 stitches across his head. So your lawsuit's dismissed and your counterclaim's dismissed. I hope you learned a good lesson. Stay in your car. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You're right.
And on the next Judge Judy.
Like Mom says, I guess don't get out of the vehicle with 2 hoodlums. He came over to our truck and we just had to defend ourselves.
Now he has a felony record for the rest of his life because of this mother.
That's not the way we should raise kids.
Now, this is case number 396 on the calendar in the matter of Miller versus Dyer. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
I have a lawsuit for assault and battery and injuries, and I have a countersuit for assault by you. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
This occurred in some bar outside in the parking lot of some bar that you were both in.
Yes.
So, Miss Miller, why don't you start?
Well, on the evening of December 4th, 1997, I arrived at the bar in about 8 o'clock maybe. I was meeting some friends. You know, we were going to celebrate because I just got a new job. I just moved back. And we were playing pool when the defendant came in with another friend. I mean, just staggering and yelling, and came up from behind and grabbed me in my crotch. And
You remember that?
No.
Do you remember anything of that evening?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Well, I let it slide. I turned around. I didn't
You let
know
it slide?
Well, not in the sense let it slide. It caught me by surprise. I was there with some friends. I thought it was my friend playing a joke on me. And when I turned around, I saw it was him and another guy, and I asked him, "What did you do that for?" He said, "I'm sorry. I thought you were someone else." Okay, you know, I'm not going to just turn around and hit someone when I wasn't for sure exactly who it was that did it to me at first. A little while later, his friend came up to me and was talking to me and apologized for him. I said, "That's fine, just don't let it happen again." And then he came up and tried to talk to me. And before he could even say anything, I let him know. I said, "Look, I don't know you, but you ever do that again, next time I will hit you." And he said, "Okay, I'm really sorry." And he was talking to me and tried to set his beer down on the table that I was sitting at, and it just went everywhere, all over me, all over the table. So he got up to go get a towel to clean it up, and had an argument with some other people that were in the bar. And then they asked him to leave. He was outside, and my friend was talking to him, so I went to the door and told her to come back inside. I put my arm out to reach for her. He slapped my hand away and told me to mind my own business. Okay, so I told him, "You don't know me to mess with me, you know, just leave me alone." And I stepped outside the bar to pull her back in, and it's when he slapped me.
Where did he slap you?
In the face.
Go ahead.
But at first, it was more, I guess, because everybody had been drinking. Myself, not nearly as much as he had. But, you know, understandable, you know, when people drink, people do get stupid. You know, I would clearly admit that I shouldn't have stepped outside the bar to pull her in. And as far as that, you know,
he slapped you. What happened next?
I slapped him back, and he grabbed me by my shoulder and picked me up, and his car was there and had me pinned up against the car with my head in between his arm and the car, and I bit him.
On the chest?
Yes, I did.
And then what happened?
He finally let me go, and dummy me, said I told him if he wanted to fight, I'd be more than willing to fight. You know, so I took off my jacket and my sweatshirt. I still had a t-shirt and a thermal on. And then we started fighting from there, and he got asked to leave, and I went back inside. They locked him out of the bar.
When you say you started fighting, you started punching each other?
No, slapping each other.
Slapping each other?
Yeah. And when he threw me to the ground, I got up, he fell, and that was it. In a way, it was more like a joke. Everybody was laughing and thought it was a joke, but me and him were being serious. But they made me go back in the bar. They asked him to leave. So he left. A comment was made that he was going to kill me.
Comment by whom?
By him. As I was going into the bar, there was other patrons. I wasn't the only one that heard him say this.
But you heard him say it,
Yes. And he came back about 10, maybe 15 minutes later in completely different clothing, banging on the door, trying to get in.
Trying to get back into the bar.
Mm-hmm. And he was then confronted. Then at that first time when he did it, the door was open. He came right back in and walked directly towards me, and everybody from the bar got him and made him go back outside. The bartender at the time locked everybody in the bar. So I waited. I figured I only live maybe 200-300 yards away from this place. I'm going to go home. When it was clear, I didn't see him anymore. So I asked the bartender to let me out, and she did. And at that time, he came up from the side of the building and grabbed me and threw me down to the ground. I hit a sidewalk, and it knocked me out. When I woke up maybe 10 seconds later, he was laying on me, and I told him I was going to kill him, and I kneed him in his mouth. And from there, we started fighting, and people started to pull him away from me. But as they pulled him off of me, he had me by my hair, dragging my face along the sidewalk. And then they took me back in the bar. He left again, and then a few minutes later, the police, the fire department, ambulance showed up.
Was he arrested?
No, he was not.
Why?
They couldn't find him. I have a
Did you file a complaint?
Yes, I did. I signed a 242 PC that night. And the witness that called the police was across the street on a payphone that witnessed this entire thing. He is in my statement.
Okay. I can't hear from a witness who's not here.
I've made attempts to contact him, but I believe he is incarcerated at the time, or at this time.
Okay. Did you go to the doctor or a hospital?
Yes, the ambulance took me to the hospital.
Can I see the reports, please?
I have the police report and the doctor bills and the...
Let me see them.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
All of a sudden, bam, in the right eye, right here, I was hit from the side. I grabbed her by her forearms right here. They kept pulling and pulling and like, let go of her, let go of her. And I couldn't let go because she was biting me.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Jennifer Miller claims Daniel Dyer assaulted her outside a bar. Daniel is countersuing, claiming Jennifer bit him. He wants money for pain and suffering.
So you both told the police that you didn't want to prosecute the other. You told the police you didn't want him prosecuted, but that you wanted him to pay for the medical bills.
Yes.
All right, sir, let's hear your version of the events, please.
Your Honor, on December 4th, 1997, a friend and I decided to go to my friend's dad's bar, which is Cheers, to play some pool, have a few drinks. My birthday was the next day, so we decided to go out there. We arrived at the bar.
You had been drinking before you got to the bar?
Yes.
And where had you started drinking?
At his house.
What time had you started drinking at his house?
Say approximately 9 or 10 o'clock.
And what time did you get to this bar?
Probably around 10:30 or 11.
So you'd been drinking for a couple of hours before you got to the bar?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, go on.
We walked into the bar, ordered a few drinks.
All right, let's stop right there. How far do you live away from the bar?
Approximately a block.
And you walked there?
No.
So you and your buddy were drinking for a couple of hours. You got into your car and you drove there.
Yes, Your Honor.
Who drove?
I drove, Your Honor.
Let's go.
We decided that we wanted to play pool, walked over to the pool table, put some quarters down on the pool table, waited for our turn to come. It came, so I walked over. I noticed that the girls were there at the table next to the pool table. I asked them if they would like to play a doubles game, so we did. We played a doubles game of pool. I noticed
Did you
later,
play a doubles game of pool with him?
I played with his friend and another elderly man from the bar, not Daniel.
We played a pool game. I noticed that it was getting late. It was going to be time for me to go to work in the morning. I had to work the next morning. and I had to get up fairly early. I motioned to my friend. I said, I want to leave, and we had been talking to Jennifer and her friend, and they said that they were going to leave also, and we all walked outside. My car was parked right outside the front door, so we were standing outside talking. My friend said that he was going to use a phone. He walked over to the phone. It was right to the right of the door. Somehow, Jennifer and I, plainly, somehow, I said, let's box. And she says to me, I would kick your... So I said, it doesn't even matter because I've never hit a woman. At that time, I said, I'm going to get out of here. I got to go to work the next morning. I turned to my friend and said, I'm leaving. He said he was staying. So I turned to open my car door, and all of a sudden, bam, in the right eye, right here, I was hit from the side. I fell into my car, hit myself on the lip, and just stunned. She ran into the bar. And then when I gained my composure, I looked back. She had come back out and looked like she was coming back for more or something. I grabbed her by her forearms right here. We fell to the ground. That's when everybody from the bar rushed out, and they thought I was beating this girl's butt or something. They tried to separate us, and in the process of separating us, she was biting me on my left pectoral muscle. And they kept pulling and pulling, and they're like, let go of her, let go of her. And I couldn't let go because she was biting me. And finally, we got separated. They told me to leave. They were calling the police and the ambulance, so I left. I went home, went to sleep. Apparently, the police officers came to my door and pounded on it. I didn't hear them. Later on, we tried to reconcile the situation. I got the bar owner to talk with her mother and her about helping pay for these medical bills. After we had discussed that, the police officer came to my house, said that he needed to speak with me. I went to the police department, gave him my statement. He took pictures of me, of my wounds, and later on he contacted me, said that she was dropping the charges, and he also said to me that I would be able to file charges against her for assault and battery.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Do you have any recollection of leaving the bar, changing your clothes?
I went home, changed my clothes, came back.
Right! You didn't tell me that, sir.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you left that part out.
Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. Jennifer Miller is suing Daniel Dyer for assaulting her outside a bar. Daniel claims he was restraining her in self-defense.
Now, what time did you get to this bar?
I arrived in between 8 and 8:30.
And had you been drinking before you arrived?
No, I hadn't. I had just come from work.
But you started to drink when you got there.
All in all, the total, during this whole thing, I had 4.5 beers.
Well, little ones or big ones?
Regular 12-ounce bottles. There's some truth to what he is saying, but a lot of it, no. As far as him, that I just struck him out of the blue for no reason is not true.
One of the things I don't understand, Miss Miller, is, he got to this bar pretty well sauced to begin with. And he continued to drink while he was there. And he was so inebriated that he didn't even hear the police when they were banging on his door. So I have to discount a lot of what he said because he was drunk and driving his car. Which means it could have hurt a lot of people in the block that you drove. So you weren't even smart enough to say, I've been drinking, let me walk the block to the bar. But that doesn't excuse your stupid behavior.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
You stay in the bar, you don't go outside.
Well, when I did leave the bar, I thought it was safe because he had been gone for a little while. And I figured I live next door, I'm going to run home. No, you know, I'll be fine.
Why didn't you go with somebody else?
Actually, I did. I left with my friend Shannon and her husband. They were walking right behind me as this happened.
Where are they?
They were supposed to be here this morning. I got a call early this morning. Their daughter had to be admitted to the hospital. She's having some type of surgery on her arms.
Well, did Shannon and her husband come to your assistance?
Yes, they did. They were out of the rest of the bar that was pulling him off of me. They were the first two out, and Shannon was yelling for other people to help her and her husband get him off of me.
And you, Mr. Dyer, have no recollection of leaving the bar, having the door locked, and then trying to come back in. You have no recollection of that, sir?
Of coming back?
Yes.
I did come back.
Do you have any recollection of leaving the bar, changing your clothes?
I went home, changed my clothes, came back.
Right! You didn't tell me that, sir.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you left that part out. What did you go home and change your clothes for?
Excuse me?
What
Because
word
the
didn't you understand?
The shirt that I had on had been bitten a hole through.
Yeah.
And so I went home, I changed my shirt.
Right.
Came back.
Why?
Because I wanted to see what was going on.
According to you, you knew what was going on. So you did leave the bar, go home. Did you drive home or did you walk home?
I drove home. Right?
Got into your car, drove home, changed your clothes, and then came back. And what happened when you came back?
I walked in the door. As soon as I walked in, everybody told me to leave. So I got in the car and I left.
No. That's not what happened.
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
No. You left out that whole piece of your story, Mr. Dyer. And the first telling of this story, it all happened at one time. She bit you, you got her off you, the police and ambulance were called, and that was the end of the story. That's what you just told me. Isn't that right, Bert?
That's what I heard.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
Your counterclaim, Mr. Dyer, is dismissed. Ms. Miller, you're suing for a lot of money. You want several $1,000s. Your medical bills were $888.93.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You want several $1,000s. You don't get several $1,000s because you're almost as dumb as he is.
Yes. I'll admit.
Almost, but not quite. But if I ever got into a fight, I'd like to have you in my corner.
Thank you.
You have photographs of your injuries?
Yes, but they did not come out as well. I also have the injuries from the police department of Daniel as well.
Where are they?
Right here.
Let me see.
And I did bring one of the shirts that I happened to be wearing that night. The other one got lost somewhere that night.
Is any of this money reimbursed by insurance?
No, it's not.
You bit him pretty good.
Well, when he's laying on top of me, there's nothing else I can do.
That's all right. Do what you got to do. You have any photographs, Mr. Dyer?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
I'd like to see them, please. His are only slightly better than yours, but this shows a beer belly, sir. Shouldn't drink. It's not attractive.
Oh, my gosh.
Judgments for the plaintiff in the amount of $888. I assume, Mr. Dyer, that you're not going to drink and drive anymore, are you, sir?
No, Your Honor.
Have a history? Any arrests for DWI?
No, Your Honor.
None?
None.
Very lucky. That's all.
Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And on the next Judge Judy.
Why, I'm very happy with the decision. I feel that what I did say was the truth. And as far as anything else, you know, nobody should be drinking if you can't control your liquor.
I didn't like the decision. I believe that she was lying, and that was not how it happened.
He was flirting, him and his friend both, very much.
I was never flirting, so I wouldn't know.
No man can touch you in places that you don't want him to unless you say yes. It goes back to the same thing as no, and that's it.
Picked the wrong person to pick on that night.
All rise. Now, this is case number 422 on the calendar in the matter of Lillard versus Flynn Christensen. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ladies, have seats, please.
Mrs. Lillard, you took care of the defendant's little girl from the time she was practically an infant for about 10 months. Your lawsuit seeks compensation for taking care of her expenses that you paid for during that 10-month period. So first, why don't you tell me how it came about that you were taking care of their baby?
Martha's mother is one of my best friends, and my daughter used to babysit for Martha, and Tiffany came into our lives, and Martha and Gary were having a hard time.
This is Martha.
Tiffany's mother, Tiffany's father, Gary. Tiffany came into our lives, and Martha asked me if I would take care of Tiffany because they were having a hard time and had no electricity, no water, and I did.
When you say if you would take care of her, you mean come and stay in your home?
Right.
How old was she at the time?
About 3 months. She became a part of our family.
How many are in your family?
There's 4. My husband, my son, my daughter, and myself.
Did she come back to visit the child?
Periodically, yes.
Why didn't your mother take care of the child?
My mother was having problems of her own with my father. They're in the verge of divorce, and I moved out of my home when I was very young. So I was on my own feet for quite a while.
How old are you?
I am 21.
How many children do you have?
I have 2.
How old are they?
2 and 1.
And the 1-year-old is the child that we're talking about?
It's Tiffany.
Are you the father of the older child?
Yes, ma'am.
And how old are you?
I'm 23.
So what kind of problems were you having that forced you to turn over one of your children to the plaintiff?
A lot of problems between me and him.
What kind of problems?
During relationship-wise, we weren't communicating. He was either at work or coming home late. I was either not caring about my home at home, taking care of my children, or keeping my house up. We weren't communicating in some sort of way.
Who was taking care of your older child when she was taking care of the baby?
The reason why she moved to that house, I did not ask her. She had voluntarily, out of the kindness of her heart, to help me in the spot.
Why don't you answer my question? I said, when she was taking care of your infant, who was taking care of your older child?
I was.
Your older child at that point was a year old.
That is right. My water, my gas, my electricity, everything was off. I was only in my home while everything was off for maybe 2 weeks, not even that. I was in the process of moving out of that house.
So you had your older child, that's a boy, with you?
Staying at her house continuously, going back and forth.
Just a sec. The baby is sleeping at her house. Your little boy is who's a year old, is sleeping at your house without gas, electric, water. Is that right?
That is right.
Okay. Now, how long did you leave the baby with the plaintiff?
10 months. With me living there periodically, in and out.
What kind of periodically?
Whenever she got up the urge to throw me out for a silly reason.
Whenever who got the urge?
Christy or her husband, Gary.
Listen, I don't know whether we're speaking the same language. Did Martha live with you, stay with you for long periods of time with her son?
No, she would not allow it.
I didn't ask you whether she would not allow it, because she doesn't have to do anything for you.
No, she doesn't.
So all I asked was, does she stay with you for long periods of time?
No, not long periods. There was one time in October when she stayed with me for 3 weeks because I didn't know what to do for Martha. Martha came back from Missouri. She was here for about 6 or 7 weeks before she even contacted me to see Tiffany or to see, have any kind of relationship with her.
What were you doing in Missouri?
I moved back home due to the problems that me and him were having. And I came back here to retrieve my daughter.
When did you go back to Missouri?
oh, let's say in April, June. I went back. And I got settled up there with my mother. I had a job. I was on my own. My children would have to have their own rooms. I was on my feet by myself singly.
So that's, let's say, from June to October, you were in Missouri?
No, I was up there for 2 months. I came back
June,
down
July.
in August.
Came back in August. Where did you go?
I stayed with some friends until I can get my daughter and go back home. I was only
So you stayed with some friends?
That's right.
And where was your son all this time?
My mother was taking care of him.
And where were you all this time?
I was here.
Here where?
I was at Riverside, where I was living with my grandparents.
And how often did you go and visit with your daughter, Tiffany?
I visited as often as I could. At a period of times, I was going over there every other day. I was making the effort that I could to see her as much as possible.
Good. Were you providing any financial support for her?
Well, my grandmother, she was has been purchasing diapers by cases every month, and now I am reimbursing her for whatever she has paid for the diapers and juices and stuff like that.
Now, while I lived there, I give her money. I was on aid. I was giving her food stamps. I was filling the whole house with food, juice, milk, whatever.
So let me understand this. You were a resident of the state of California. Is that right?
Yes, I was.
And you were collecting welfare for yourself and your 2 children?
Yes, I was.
Just answer my question. Now, you were collecting welfare for your daughter from the time she was born and registered as having been born until what time?
The only times I collected for her was when I was living with her at Christy's house. I was not receiving aid for Tiffany.
You were not?
I was getting medical benefits, and that's it. And I had my case terminated.
When did you have your case terminated?
I believe it was in last year, exactly, of September. I only received aid for her for 3 months after she was born, and then my aid was terminated. I was not getting aid for her. I only received aid for my son.
And you also applied for aid for him in Missouri?
Yes, because I had him with me up there.
So you were now, and did you get money from welfare in Missouri for him?
For him.
And so you were also getting money from California for him?
No, I was not getting money.
When did you close your case in California for him?
It was terminated 2 months before I left California for my son.
Why?
Because I knew I was moving out there. I had a job. I was working at the time.
You weren't working at the time. You hadn't even moved there yet. Why would you cancel your case 2 months before you moved?
My family underneath the tables. I was doing little jobs babysitting.
So you were working under the table. You were getting cash under the table while you were collecting welfare.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Listen, you seem to think that everybody else is wrong and you're right.
I'm completely wrong.
So say I'm completely wrong.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Christina Lillard wants Martha Flynn and Gary Christensen to pay for nearly a year of child care.
This is an approval notice dated July of 1998 that you applied for temporary assistance for yourself and your 2 children.
That's right.
And your first check was going to be in August of 98. As you have already received a check for July in California.
Well, I never got that check.
That's what it says here.
As a matter of fact, when I was on aid, that was going to her house, and she has been known to cash frauds of checks. She has scammed the pizza place.
So
she's not even living in her own home, Your Honor. She can't even pay her own bills. That's why the baby was pulled out of her.
I want you to be quiet. First month, prorated for July and August, you will receive $547. After that, $360 for yourself and your 2 children.
When I got back with Tiffany to show she was in my care.
That's not what it says here at all. That's not what it says here at all.
Anybody knows when you apply for aid, you have to show your children in your care. Anywhere.
No, listen to me. Listen to me. You have to show a child.
That's right.
Doesn't necessarily have to be your child. You've got to bring a child. I've been in this business a very long time.
You've got to show the baby's birth certificate. You've got to show the baby's immunization cards. The baby's shots weren't brought up for 10 months. You didn't ever have the baby's immunizations when she was in your care.
Judge Judy, I did have her immunization shots done.
It's not necessary. This person is trying to make excuses for something that I don't understand. You have another problem, Miss Lillard, and I'm going to tell you what it is. these two people, I shouldn't say him, I'm not sure about him, but probably, have figured out to get the most out of the state that they possibly can with doing the very least that they possibly can. And she's all over the place. She's in Missouri, she's in California, she's in with hot water, without hot water, with electricity, without electricity. 20 years old, she has 2 babies, and he's doing...
That is right.
I don't know what. But you're supposed to be responsible. So if you are living at home, you're supposed to be working, and you're supposed to make sure that your 2 children aren't getting welfare. You look like a big, strong person. Why were your 2 children getting welfare anywhere?
I was working.
Well, why were your 2 children getting welfare anywhere? You don't know. Did you know that they were getting welfare?
Yes.
Why didn't you go down to the welfare office and say to them, listen, I'm working. Nobody has to support my children but me. Right?
Right.
Could I just show you one more thing?
Yeah.
This is why, if you would give this to her, please.
Oh, we have a copy of that too.
What is this?
When I received power of attorney for medical reasons in August, it was the same day that Gary filed for custody of his 2 children against Martha.
That's right.
That is basically Martha's response to what had happened from the time that Gary filed for custody, gave me temporary custody of Tiffany, to where I could go get her immunization shots, in which I did.
She was 10 months behind.
Could you be quiet?
She was
what do you blame? Listen, you seem to think that everybody else is wrong and
No.
you're right.
No,
you make a baby.
I'm completely wrong.
So say I'm completely wrong.
And I'm willing to take what I have, my responsibilities.
Good.
But in order of all this, she's upset because we have taken the baby out of the home, which I know she has grown attached to my child. I know this. And I've never, she knew I was, once I got on my feet, I wanted to come back and take care of my daughter.
Let me ask you a question. That's true. And I just started to explain to Ms. Lillard that her problem is, with regard to your lawsuit, that you didn't have an agreement with her that I saw here that they were going to support the baby.
If you would have her read number 5.
None of these were under reimbursements.
Let me see. You don't even know what you're showing me.
I never signed anything.
You didn't have to, Gary did.
And could that have been after you accepted care
Could
of
you
my
be
daughter?
quiet? You're irritating me. Could you point out to me where it says that he is going to pay support?
On number 5, it's the second page.
It says grantor, that's him, consents to the custodian, that's you, seeking any and all revenues which might be able to contribute or assist in the healthy environment in which this child will be a part of. Who prepared this for you?
She did.
I didn't. I'm not a lawyer. I did the best I could.
Okay. This still doesn't address an agreement that you had. Let's start with her. You know, when you have an agreement, I will take care of Tiffany, but you have to pay the child's expenses. That will be thus and such a month, and I will be reimbursed for that. That's a contract. So what you're really coming in here is suing on, the only thing you could sue on is a verbal contract. You
That's all that I had.
You didn't have one with her.
Well, with her, there was no contract. It was,
she just said, would you help me?
Right, and I did.
Now, with him, you had no verbal contract with him that he was going to pay you a certain amount of support for taking care of the child. Right. This says that you can apply for any assistance.
And I did. I applied for Medi-Cal and for the baby, for insurance, health reasons, and 2 days later, after I applied for her, they revoked the power of attorney.
Sure did.
They took her from me the second time with 4 police officers. I do not know what she told them, but they came into my home, took her in her underwear.
She was in jumpers,
diapers, and booties, and I never got to say goodbye. I didn't know why.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
I'm receiving aid for my son and daughter until I get on my feet.
You get on your feet. You're standing on your feet.
Exactly right.
You're standing on your feet.
Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. Christina Lillard claims Martha Flynn and Gary Christensen owe her for taking care of their daughter for nearly a year.
Okay, so you revoked the guardianship that you had given her.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me why.
Because at the time, my grandfather was having a birthday party, and I wanted to take my daughter to the party, and I was denied that. And I finally realized that it was time for my kids to be together, so I had to do this to revoke to get my daughter out of their home.
Where do you work now?
It's appliance.
How long have you worked there?
About 5 years.
You're not married to her, is that right?
No.
You legally been declared the father of these two children in any court?
No.
Where are those welfare papers? Let's see them. Did you name him as the father of these children in your welfare application?
And my son, it was undetermined, and we are going through courts right now to establish paternity for that.
You don't have to go through courts to establish paternity. When you apply for public assistance in this country, they ask you who the father of the children are. Did you name him as the father of your two children? The answer is you did not.
No, I did not.
Right.
As my daughter. She was.
Yes, I'm named for the daughter, but not for my son.
In your welfare application.
That's right.
Just a second. In your welfare application.
For my son, it is unknown, and for my daughter, it is Gary Christensen.
It says that here?
I don't know what it says right there.
Oh, no, it doesn't say anything about you naming anybody as the father of these
that's
children.
only one form of, a form of approval of assistance. That's only one form of everything you have to file
Has the Department of Social Services, the State Department of Social Services, brought you into court for support? No. You know why? Because she didn't tell him you were the father. Do you want to know why?
I was uncertain.
Because if she told them that you were the father, they would come against you for the support that she had been receiving for the children.
I'm the one who turned his name in. It was uncertain.
What made you certain now?
Because I just started dating Gary at the time I got pregnant.
Well, what makes you certain now that he's the father of both?
We are going through paternity right now.
So are you telling me now that you're not the father, that you don't know whether he's the father of your older child?
Yeah, that's exactly right what I'm saying.
Is that right? Do you two live together?
No.
But they do live under the same roof.
They do?
Yes.
In whose house?
Gary's
I've
grandmother.
been living with my grandmother. My grandmother has let her and my daughter and son come in till they're...
And son. So your daughter and son, according to you, both children, yours, come live in your house?
No, my grandmother.
Your grandmother's house. And you have two separate rooms, I assume?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what's the status of your welfare case now?
I'm receiving aid for my son and daughter until I get on my feet.
You get on your feet. You're standing on your feet.
Exactly right.
You're standing on your feet.
Exactly right.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
I want to tell you something. Two of you have made an art form out of figuring out how to scam the system.
No, the reason why my daughter
Scam the system. And I want to tell you something. If you've been receiving welfare for your children, and he's been working at an appliance store for 5 years, your lawsuit seeks money. $500 a month for 10 months to take care of their child. Right? That's right. This big, strong, I don't know, 6'1" maybe? Does it look like 6'1" to you?
Taller.
Right, maybe 210 pounds to 20, something like that, right? Looks like he can move mountains to me. But he works in an appliance store, and he's been working there for 5 years, while he makes babies that I support. That's irritating.
Oh, lovely.
Not only do I support your babies, and Bird too, so he should be irritated too, because we're the taxpayers, but this lady spent the money. So you made the money, you kept your money. She got the money from the state, she kept that money. She spent the money, and she gets nothing. Judgment in this case is for the plaintiff in the amount of $5,000, that's all.
Parties are excused, you may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And on the next Judge Judy.
I have a lot of hostility, and right now she expects to maybe go back to Riverside and see my daughter, and I'm not thinking she's ever going to see my daughter again.
And I don't feel, since they are millionaires, they should be suing
they
us
won the
for
lottery.
$5,000, and get away with it.
$3.8 million in the lottery, but where is all the money going?
I would give my lottery winnings away if I could just have one more minute with that little girl. Money's nothing. It's to them, but nothing to me.
This is case number 397 on the calendar in the matter of Miller versus Cornell. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
This whole mess started in a parking lot. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Miss Miller, you were going into the parking lot, according to your complaint, looking for a parking space.
No, ma'am, I was coming out.
You were coming out. You had already were shopping, coming out, and you were parked in the parking lot.
Parked leaving, yes.
And you were pulling your car out of your space, backing out.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And you were coming down the lane where she was backing out.
Yes, ma'am.
Start at that point.
As I came around the corner, there's 5 parking stalls from where I came around the corner to where she was parked. And she pulled out, it didn't look, and hit my front of my truck. And from there, she looked at me, I looked at her. She continued to pull out and left the parking lot. From there, I followed her out into the major intersection. And we both turned left at the light. And from then on, she started driving at a high rate of speed.
And you were chasing her?
No, I was not chasing her. I was following her.
Or following her?
Yes, ma'am.
Following her in order to do what?
To get her license plate number and to try and get her to stop.
Okay. Now, you are a police officer.
Yes, ma'am.
But you were off duty at the time.
Yes, ma'am.
This lawsuit involves a complaint that you filed against her.
Right.
With Internal Affairs. Is that right?
Yes.
Your lawsuit alleges that this complaint was filed maliciously, and this complaint will remain on your record, and you want to be compensated for that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so now finish the story.
After I continued to follow her, she proceeded to run several stop signs, continuing at a high rate of speed. When I got to the last intersection, I stopped at the last stop sign. I looked left and I looked right and didn't see her, but I saw debris coming off one of the side streets to my right.
What kind of debris?
Dust, some branches.
Okay.
From there, I figured that's the way she went, so I went down there, and as I came to the corner, there were 3 trees that had been sheared completely down to the stump and from a median that was in the middle of the roadway. As I came around that corner, she was parked at the curb, out of her car, talking on a phone when I got to the scene. I got up, got out of my car. She immediately approached me and was screaming at me, was...
what was she saying?
Obscenities, mostly, and why were you following me? From then, I pulled my badge out, I identified myself as a police officer, I asked her for her driver's license and her registration. She continued to yell at me. She finally did go to her car and get it for me. I asked the neighbor who was standing there to call 911, and the neighbor said no. I asked if I could use the phone to call 911, and the neighbor said no. So I went back to my car, got my cell phone, and called 911. I had attempted to do so several times, but it's a dead zone in the area of town, and I kept getting cut off. I got through to dispatch, got cut off. They had to call me back, and they dispatched a unit.
And then when did you hear about this letter?
The next morning, I contacted my insurance company, and I asked them if I should file a claim with my insurance company. I had already gotten a bid on my truck. It was roughly about $360 worth of damage. My insurance company advised me not to file a claim because my deductible was $500. When I got back from getting the estimates, there was a call from Sergeant in the Internal Affairs Division asking me to give him a call. And that's when I was aware that there was a complaint filed.
Do you have a copy of the letter?
Yes, ma'am.
May I see it, please?
Yes, ma'am. There was several letters that were filed.
I'd like to see all the letters that were filed. I'm going to read these only because these letters accompany this letter to Internal Affairs.
Yes, ma'am.
The people who signed these letters, are these neighbors of yours?
They were neighbors in the area where the car was, where I had the accident.
But you were, according to your papers, on your way home when this happened. Is that right?
Correct.
So are these people that you knew as
This is
neighbors?
not the area where I live, though.
Are these people that you knew? The answer is either yes or no.
No.
You didn't know any of these people?
No.
Well, all of these letters are exactly the same. Who typed them up?
My mother did.
Your mother wasn't there.
No.
All of these people, all of these 4 people did not see the exact same thing. I mean, so specifically, she then used her personal cell phone to call the police. Miss Cornell used the neighbor's phone call to call her parents. How would these people know that? All these people who live at different addresses. Huh? How would they know that?
They didn't.
Of course they didn't, and they signed this. They signed these letters, right?
Yes.
Officer Miller made a citizen's arrest against Miss Cornell, not for hit and run, but for reckless driving. How would all these 4 people, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, right? And whoever else you have here, how would they know that?
They were the ones witnessing the confrontation between...
They may have, if you tell me they may have witnessed the confrontation, they may have witnessed the confrontation, but how would they know what she made an arrest for unless somebody told them? Miss Cornell, how would they know that? And it was your mother who typed these up and went back to these people?
Yes.
Where's your mother?
She's being detained right now.
For what?
She is involved in a criminal. She's in jail right now.
Without going into the specifics of it, what is she in jail for? A violent crime or a non-violent crime?
Non-violent.
Non-violent, having to do with fraud?
Yes.
Misrepresentation?
I'm not too sure about.
Yeah. Well, take these letters. Tell your mother next time she prepares affidavits for somebody, she's got to change the facts around a little bit. Miss Cornell.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
According to you, she went through red lights and she was proceeding at a high rate of speed. She says that she didn't know who you were. She thought maybe you were some nut, which is possible, right? Could be.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Police officer Shannon Miller is suing Laura Cornell for filing a false complaint after a traffic accident. Laura claims Officer Miller caused her to crash.
Now I'm going to hear your version of these events.
Okay. I was leaving the Blockbuster parking lot, and I was backing out of the parking lot, looking behind me when Miss Miller, or a truck, pulled up behind me and honked its horn. I had seen it coming up, so I stopped. And I motioned for her to back up since I was almost out of the stall, and I proceeded to back up, and I left the parking lot area, proceeded home, and the truck started following me, started coming up behind me, close, almost trying to rear end me. Then the truck pulled up alongside of me, crossed over a double yellow line onto oncoming traffic. The truck pulled up right alongside of me, and the driver started flashing something in the window, which I could not make out. So in my best opinion, I decided not to stop, and so I tried to get away from this woman.
Mm-hmm. Now, you knew, how long have you been driving?
How long have I been driving?
Mm-hmm.
4 years.
Okay. So when you're backing out of a parking space and somebody's coming down the lane, who has the right of way?
The person in the lane.
So when you pulled out of the parking space and you motioned to her to pull back, she actually had the right of way, right?
Yes.
Now let me see the estimates to your car for the damage.
I also have pictures.
I'd like to see the pictures.
The beauty bar on the bumper was bent, and you can see how it sticks out just a little bit from the bumper. It's very minor damage.
Hardly worth all this fuss.
I agree.
Looks like a tap to me.
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So did you overreact to this tap?
Could have, a little bit.
You probably did. And you probably tapped her car. Officer Miller, how long have you been with the police force?
15 years.
Ever had complaints?
This is the second complaint in 15 years.
When was the last one?
The first year I came on the job.
What happened as a result of this letter?
I now have a permanent record on my file, and should I go up for another job or a job promotion, it is reviewed and it is looked at.
But what happened as a result of any disciplinary proceedings as a result of this letter?
I was not disciplined. I was cleared of all misconduct.
So your lawsuit alleges that she maliciously sent this letter?
Yes, ma'am.
Quite frankly, Officer Miller, I'm reading the letter, and it's her version of the events. Some of them you really don't dispute. That you did follow her. You were in an unmarked car, your own personal car. She really didn't know who you were at the time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That there was de minimis damage to your car. You can hardly see it. That by, you say following her to get her license plates, but according to you, she went through red lights and she was proceeding at a high rate of speed. She says that she didn't know who you were. She thought maybe you were some nut. Which is possible, right?
Could be.
So quite frankly, I don't see that this letter was written maliciously. The only problem that I have with it are the supporting documents that your mother prepared in support of it.
Yes.
Now, did you send these letters with the supporting documents, or did your mother?
My mother did.
What kind of driving record do you have, Miss Cornell?
Perfect up till this incident.
You had lots of damage to your car?
None at all. Oh, yes. None from the hit, but when I went over the median, yes.
Mm-hmm. Did you pay for that?
My mother did.
Your mother.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Your adrenaline got pumped up.
Yes, ma'am.
She doesn't know who you are. You're some nut following her in a big car. Doesn't that make sense to you?
Yes, ma'am, it makes sense.
Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. Police officer Shannon Miller says Laura Cornell filed a false complaint against her after an auto accident.
Well, Officer Miller, if you had been in a police car, if you had been in a marked car, I can understand your complaint. I can understand a little bit better that she did not yield to your authority immediately and pull over in her car. Because of all the crazies that are on the road these days, I usually give the best advice to people that when somebody is behaving erratically, you don't know what's going on, you don't get out of your car. And that's pretty much what she did. She said, I'm not getting out of my car, I'm going home as fast as I can because I don't know who this person is. And even the fact that you drove up next to her and, according to her, flashed something in the window. Do you have kids?
I have 3.
How old's the oldest?
9.
When the oldest is driving, you're going to tell the oldest, somebody pulls up next to you and flashes something shiny in the window, would you pull over? They were in the similar situation. Would you tell your child to pull over? I wouldn't tell mine to pull over. If I couldn't see some real identification, somebody's flashing something shiny in a window and chasing me, I would not pull over. So I don't see that this letter was sent maliciously, unless you can give me some reason why you believe it was sent maliciously. It's sent the day immediately after this incident.
It was sent a month later.
Why did you wait a month to send it?
I do not know.
Your Honor, in addition to her calling my department, the deputy that came to the scene to take the report They also filed an internal affairs investigation against that deputy for failure to do her job. They also contacted the lieutenant and the captain at the Temecula Police Department and requested that I be arrested for assault with a deadly weapon.
You mean your truck?
Yes.
Officer Miller, this was a very unfortunate experience. I honestly believe that you exercised very poor judgment in driving in the street at that high rate of speed, chasing somebody who had at best put a little kiss on your car bumper. Somebody could have been hurt. I mean, the fact that she went over a median, even she could have been hurt over nothing more than a little kiss on, on your car. Your adrenaline got pumped up.
Yes, ma'am.
And that usually doesn't happen to women. That usually happens to guys when somebody disrespects them in their car. But I'm surprised at your reaction to this. Because is this a residential neighborhood that you were in when you were following her?
Yes, ma'am. It was a posted 40-mile-an-hour zone.
Yeah, but she doesn't know who you are. I'm not following her in a big car.
She was already way in front of me to where I was out of sight of her when she continued at her high rate of speed.
Because she's trying to get away from you. She doesn't know who you are. Doesn't that make sense to you?
Yes, ma'am, it makes sense.
Sure it does. It makes sense. It would make sense to me. It's what I would tell my kids if somebody was chasing them. Because as far as she was concerned, she was being chased by somebody she didn't know. So I think that you overreacted. I don't see any evidence in this letter other than her version of the events. You were, in fact, arrested?
Yes.
For what?
For reckless driving.
And what happened with those charges?
My lawyer had it dropped in court.
Were you present?
No.
Do you know that those charges were dismissed?
Yes, I found out from Internal Affairs.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
Okay. So I assume everybody figured out that this was just an unfortunate incident that should go no further. She had the right of way. Next time you let somebody come out, and you should know better than to chase her at a high rate of speed over something that was really a non-incident. There are some places that don't even let you chase a robbery suspect in a residential neighborhood at a high rate of speed because, unfortunately, in the last 10 years, a lot of people have gotten killed as a result of these high-speed chases by police after fleeing people. You're aware of that?
Yes.
You have a policy in your department with regard to fleeing suspects?
Yes.
What's the policy?
Policy?
Yeah.
You get approval to follow.
You get approval to follow?
Yes.
You have to call first?
Yes.
Even if you're in a police car?
Yes.
Okay. Your complaint's dismissed, that's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And on the next Judge Judy.
I was disappointed.
It was perfect.
I thought this might have sent a message to people that they can't file false complaints against policemen and get away with it.
I was scared because I thought it was probably a gun or a weapon that could be used against me.
I was cleared of all misconduct.
I did not overreact. I did what was in my best interest by leaving.
It will stay on my record permanently, but I was not given any discipline for it.
All charges were dropped and we feel freed of this issue.
I think it sends out a very disappointing message for policemen.
Cops should know when to say no.
Overpayment on a credit card shared by John and his deceased friend.
Order. All rise. Quiet in the courtroom, please. All rise. Sir, let's do this. Yeah, this is case number 424 on the calendar in the matter of Ray versus Richter. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
Mr. Ray, the defendant is the executor of an estate of, I assume, a mutual friend, somebody
Yes.
that you both knew. You knew this person for about 15 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And he died recently.
Yes, ma'am.
According to your complaint, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, you had a joint American Express card with the deceased
Yes, ma'am.
that you used. And that you had, at the time of his death, made an overpayment
Right.
to American Express
Right.
in the amount of $624.
It was actually 640 instead of 624. I read it wrong.
640.
Yes, ma'am.
As the executor of the estate, you received a check from American Express for the $640. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you want the $640 back.
Yes.
Why shouldn't he have it back?
Because I think rightfully the money belongs back in the estate because he was a beneficiary of the estate. He received thousands of dollars from the estate. And I don't know that this money actually did not come from Mr. Parks because of the...
Mr. Parks is the deceased.
That's correct.
What do you mean he was the beneficiary of the estate?
He was one of the beneficiaries of the estate. He received an apartment building. He received $10,000 in cash. He received thousands of dollars during the time of their relationship. And as the executor, I'm duty-bound to conserve assets for the estate. And this money rightfully came through Mr. Parks, and it should go to the other legatees. And I think there's a moral question, a moral and a decency question involved here.
Well, let's talk about the moral and decency question, because if he can establish, Mr. Richter, that this was his money, then he should get it back, not have to share it with the other distributees under the estate. You would agree with that, correct?
I would.
I mean, from a legal perspective. Now you talk about morally and question of decency. What does that have to do with his $640?
It has to do with the fact that he said he proclaimed his intimate and undying love for the deceased, and that he was his best friend, and he betrayed the trust because after Mr. Parks died, I set up a memorial fund to establish a plaque in West Hollywood to commemorate his life. And this plaintiff, who received thousands and thousands of dollars from his best friend, wasn't even able to contribute $100 back to this. And it goes back to a quote that I read that said ethics has to do with obeying the unenforceable but very powerful canons of society as to what constitutes proper relationships between people. You don't get a smooth running society with law alone. It has to be based on moral concepts.
Were you directed by Mr. Parks before he died to set up this memorial fund for him?
Yes, I was.
And how did he direct that it should be paid? I mean, is it in the will?
No, it wasn't. It was one of his good friends.
So this is something that his friends decided to do for him
Correct.
on a voluntary basis.
Correct.
Okay, and he chose not to volunteer.
Correct, but I thought...
Is that just a second? Is that right?
Right.
All right. Which is your prerogative. That has nothing to do, Mr. Richter, with your responsibility as executor. If he can establish that he actually paid this money. Have you asked him for proof that he paid the money?
No.
Why not?
I didn't think it was my responsibility to do that.
Well, it's your responsibility to distribute assets. You got this check.
Yes, and I put it in the estate fund and contributed to this memorial plaque fund.
Well, you can't do that. Mr. Richter, then you're treating the money as your own. Let's listen to what you're doing. You got the money. The deceased made no specific direction to you as executor to establish a memorial in his name. You chose as his executor to, according to you, take money from his estate and create a memorial fund for him.
I thought it was a moral and decent thing to do, Your Honor.
That's not your prerogative, sir.
It's a moral society. We have to live up to some decency nowadays.
Hey, Mr. Richter, whose morality?
Society's.
No, yours, sir.
I think any decent person would do that. After professing to be a best friend, they would give $100
Just a minute.
To a plaque.
That may be, but you can't take somebody else's money, other people's money. They even wrote a play about that, PM.
You can't take other people's money, and in this case, it was other people's money, whether it was his or the other legatees and distributees under the will or anybody else. You can't take their money and do something because you think it's a nice thing to do. You are merely, as an executor, a voice for the deceased. And the voice of the deceased has been created in the four walls of his will.
But I knew what he would have wanted done, Your Honor. I lived with the man as we were close, personal, and business acquaintances for 25 years. We lived as a family.
Did you receive any property under the will?
Yes.
What property did you receive under the will?
The residue of the estate after the other legatees had been paid.
And according to you, at this point, what is that? Give me a figure.
Probably $100,000.
Okay. So that he cared for, clearly, both of you. And he was a man of substance.
But I took care of him for 15 years when he was sick with AIDS.
Mr. Richter, he evidently cared about a lot of people and wanted to leave a lot of people comfortably.
Very generous.
And you knew him, according to you, intimately because you lived together as a family for 15 years, right?
Yes.
And yet he never put in that will something that would have been really important that he wanted with some of his money, and he clearly had plenty of money to establish a memorial fund for himself. Never did. So you can't do that. Let me see the proof that you made these payments, sir.
This is all the statement. These are the statements.
All right, don't give me that.
Okay.
That'll give me a hernia.
This is that's the check, the last payment, 1,400 something.
Now, why would you make an overpayment to American Express?
I purchased something in it, a television for my house. It didn't fit in the cabinet. I returned it, and I'd already paid the bill.
It says $625.03.
Okay, then it was $625. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'd like you to show this, please, to Mr. Richter. Mr. Richter, an examination of those documents established to my satisfaction that he, in fact, is entitled to the $625.03 back.
Well, his money circulating back from Mr. Parks.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Those people who did contribute, did they get copies of the names of those people who did not?
They did. So they would know who the hypocrites were.
And later today,
one of your twin boys set fire to your apartment.
Yes.
How did this fire start?
A lighter childproof flame.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Bird breeder John Ray says retired real estate agent Les Richter cheated him out of money owed from a deceased friend.
Mr. Ray.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just curious, sir, and this has really nothing to do with your lawsuit, but you're going to answer my question anyway. If you were approached to contribute $100 to this memorial plaque for somebody that left you a substantial amount of money, why wouldn't you want to contribute to that?
I actually was going to do it, and then the letters started coming, and then it was more aggressive and more bullying about giving the money. And if he had just called me and asked me, that would have been fine.
Well, somebody initially just called you and asked you.
No, actually, it just came in a letter, and it was just more or less of an order.
Well, what did it say?
It just said, we're doing a fund, and you inherited some money. You should give the money to us. And it wasn't really an option. Since then, the people that didn't contribute, he sent nasty letters to. When they sent a letter back, he sent it to all the other people so they could see that they didn't give. So every time someone didn't pay, everyone else got a list of who didn't pay to try and make people feel guilty, apparently.
It would have been the nice thing to do.
I agree.
Would have been the nice thing to do, and then you wouldn't have been involved in this thing. But you were under no obligation to do that, but it clearly would have been the nice thing to do. And then a second letter came, and then other letters were sent out to a lot of people, and they all got the names of the people who didn't make the contribution.
Exactly.
Is that what you did?
Correct. There's only one other letter, Your Honor, another request.
Another request, but then did those people who did contribute, did they get copies of the names of those people who did not?
They did. So they would know who the hypocrites were.
Oi, Mr. Richter, shh. You know, there's a difference between being an executor of an estate and...
We were closer, Your Honor.
Under these circumstances, sir, you are the executor of the estate, and you are not the morality monitor. You can't set yourself up as a morality monitor for somebody else's estate.
Somebody in this country has to.
Shh. You may want to do that, but you can't do that with other people's money. You could do that with your own money, but you can't do that with other people's money.
I did what was right, Your Honor.
You did what was right according to your standards.
I think it's most people's standard.
I assume that you cared for and deeply loved this man.
Absolutely.
Most people here, including myself, have lost people who they're very close to. And everybody grieves in their own way. I know I have never set up a memorial plaque for my loved ones who died. It was just not something that I would even think of doing. I grieved in my own way. I would not impose my way of grieving on anybody else. And what you were doing was, in setting up this memorial, is it was a way of personally addressing your own grief. That's what you were doing in setting up. And that's not a bad thing to do. But, Mr. Richter, then you pay for it.
It wasn't.
Then you, who stand to inherit $100,000 from this man, you say, I want to set up, and I don't care about anybody else. This is how I feel comfortable addressing my grief. I want to set up this memorial in his name. If somebody else wants to contribute, that's fine. But this is the way I want to address it. So
I wasn't administrating it, Your Honor. A deputy sheriff in West Hollywood, who was a close friend of his, was administrating it. He was collecting the money.
it doesn't make any difference. It's something that you just told me you wanted and felt it was appropriate enough to do, to take money out of an estate with no direction from the deceased to accomplish. That's wrong, Mr. Richter. It's legally wrong. He's entitled to his $625.03 back. Judgment for the plaintiff. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out. Out the back door to your right, please.
It was a gold-digging situation. He wanted nothing but money.
I think he was a little bit envious of our friendship, and he never really liked me anyway, so.
And now the next case.
All parties on Bowman versus Trum. Step forward, please.
27-year-old warehouse worker Brian Bowman is suing the mother of his 4 children, 27-year-old nursing assistant Heidi Trum, because one of their kids set his room on fire.
Mr. Bowman, you and the defendant were married. You have 4 children. You are now divorced. Is that right?
We were never married, Your Honor.
And you had 4 children together?
Yes.
Could you just tell me why you opted to have 4 children without getting married?
We had set a date and we had split up. It was on and off again relationship.
Well, at one time when it was on, in 1994, one of your twin boys set fire to your apartment.
Yes.
And how old was this child?
At that time, he was 4 years old.
And you paid for the damage to the apartment?
Yes, I did.
Were you working?
Yes, I was working in double shifts.
Did they garnish your salary?
They were garnishing my salaries, and then I used a tax refund to pay it off.
And how much was the total bill?
The total bill was $2,128.07.
And you think the defendant should pay for half?
Yes.
And how were you supporting yourself?
I was working at McDonald's.
At no time was anybody in your family receiving state aid?
Yes, we were.
How did I know that? During what period of time were you receiving state aid?
Ever since we were together.
Well, that's a good reason not to get married. Right?
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You want a lot of pain and suffering and all of that nonsense. You don't get compensated for that.
And for the
You get divorced for that, but since you've never been married, you don't have to get divorced.
Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. 27-year-old warehouse worker Brian Bowman is suing the mother of his 4 children, 27-year-old nursing assistant Heidi Trum, because one of their kids set his room on fire.
So you've always worked, you said, double shifts. You were working double shifts when this happened?
Yes, I was.
What were you all doing with the state aid?
She, at the time, was getting food stamps for the children.
Why?
I do not know.
You don't know anything about that.
I know about the aid that she was receiving. Yeah, the food was
When you say
purposed.
she, you were living together as a family with 4 children. What do you mean she?
I meant Heidi, She is the one that
We.
went in. We.
Because if you didn't want your children to be on welfare, then you go to the welfare office and say, I am the father of these 4 children, and I will support my children. That's what you do. Unless you want a scam bird over here who would then have to pay for your children, and he's got his own children, right?
A lot of them.
So to say. As you see, Mr. Bowman, I am very unsympathetic to both of you. You understand?
Yes, I do.
Good. Now, how did this fire start?
I arrived home in the morning. I laid down to go to sleep after working 3rd shift, and I was awakened by the smoke detector going off.
And how did this little boy get hold of something to make a fire?
It was by my cigarettes.
Your lighter?
Counter. A lighter, childproof lighter.
Well, evidently it wasn't childproof. You came home from work and put your cigarettes down after your 3rd shift with your lighter.
Yes.
So it was your lighter, the lighter that you last had your hand on, that started the fire.
Yes.
Perfect. Now let's get to your counterclaim. You have a counterclaim, a lot of it is nonsense. You want a lot of pain and suffering and all of that nonsense from all the time you lived together, right?
For part of the time, yes.
You don't get compensated for that.
And for the
you
time...
get divorced for that, but since you've never been married, you don't have to get divorced.
And for the time that I wasn't with him. When I left him, I had to go through therapy, and I have the bill for that.
So, should have left him a long time before that.
Your Honor, that
Just a
therapy was
second.
court-ordered.
Court-ordered because why? Because your children were taken away from you?
Because she gave all 4 of our children up.
To what?
To my relatives, because she could not handle them. And when she wanted our daughters back,
They
she had
have
to go through
problems. The boys have attention deficit disorder. And being a single parent, 4 children were just way too much for me.
In any event, you had to go to therapy? Pay for it. What else? What else?
The name calling, the yelling and screaming at me.
Yeah.
He's called me a fat cow, a whale, pig.
Yeah, so you left him.
So I left him.
Good, that's what you do if somebody calls you names. You don't sue him for that. Yeah, you leave him. What else?
Also, the pain and suffering.
Pain and suffering?
Yes.
Let me tell you who has been paying and suffering. Taxpayers.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
You're the new husband?
Yes.
These children still get welfare? Is not an answer.
They get medical assistance.
They still get welfare?
Yes.
Goodbye, Miss Truman. Goodbye, Mr. Bowman. Go have a happy life. Try to get a job. Take your children off welfare so that Bird doesn't have to pay for them because it's really ticking him off. And you've got to be smart enough to know, madam, that there are some things that you don't get compensated for. You don't get compensated for staying around if someone is calling you nasty names. You certainly don't make 4 children with them. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And on the next Judge Judy.
Well, I feel that she's half responsible for the bill because they are both of our children, not just mine.
I want the harassment to stop. I'm in and out of court at least once a month. And I just want it to stop.
I love my kids to death, but I wish I wouldn't have had them with her.
All rise. This is case number 40 on the calendar in the matter of Patterson versus Summerfield. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
Ms. Patterson, according to the papers that I've read, you and the defendant were involved in a 7-year relationship. And while you were no longer in that formal relationship, you were still dating. One evening, you claim that he assaulted you. He is countersuing because he says that you went absolutely berserk that evening, damaged his home, the contents of his home, damaged his car, and had him arrested for assault. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you're suing him for the medical costs attendant to your injuries that he caused you. Let me hear about this evening. How did it start?
Me and my friend Jan went over to his house. He came and picked us up. We went to his house. We had been drinking some. I kind of passed out a little bit for a little while. I came to, and they were engaged together. I left at that time, and I called my friend telling her she needed to leave, that me and Chuck needed to talk over things.
You mean the friend that was with you?
Yes.
Her name was?
Jan.
Jan. Okay.
She didn't leave. I went back a few hours later.
What did you go back for?
To see what was going on.
Go ahead.
See if she had left yet. Well, I seen them both pulling out together. I followed him, and he stopped, came back to my van, tried to drag me out of my window of my van, punched me in the mouth. I went out for a couple minutes seeing stars. He pulled out my earring. I tried to get out to look for her. I went over to the passenger side. She's down the floorboard.
Just a second. He punched you. You went over to his car, and you looked in the passenger side of his car. What did you do that for?
To see that my friend was there, or so-called friend.
Okay, so you saw your friend in the car.
And he took off at that time.
Then he got back in his car and took off. And then what happened?
I went home, my daughter cleaned me up, and my mom took me to the hospital.
And as far as you recall, that's all that went on that evening?
Basically.
Okay. And Mr. Summerfield, you have an entirely different version of the events of that evening, so I'm prepared to hear you, sir.
All right. Approximately 10 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from Audra saying that her and a friend had taken the day off and they was partying and wanted to come over to my house and use the hot tub. Like I said, we wasn't together at the time. She's actually engaged to another man at this time.
No, I wasn't.
Shh, don't answer him. You see, he's been quiet. Listen to me. He was quiet.
I wasn't even seeing anybody at this time, though, so
he was quiet. Hey! He was quiet when you were testifying. You have to be quiet, Miss Patterson, when he's testifying. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Go ahead.
I called her house. They was fixing food for the kids. Told me to pick up a bottle of gin and come over. I did this after they fed the kids.
Hey, just a second.
I'm sorry.
Absolute silence while he's testifying unless I ask you a question. Go ahead.
We all three went back to my house in my car. When I went in, I had 2 dogs I had to take care of, put them out, feed them,
Can we
whatever.
speed this up a little bit?
All
Let's
right.
get to the point where
she laid down on the love seat. A few minutes later, I come in and said, Kay, you awake? She got up with an attitude about something. Jan had not gotten out of the chair. Nothing had happened. She started going off. You couldn't even talk to her. I tried to tell her, I'll take you home. She stomped out. A little while later, she came back. Same thing. She left again.
What do you mean she came back?
She walked back to my house. She walked out for a few minutes. I thought she came back for me to take her home.
Okay.
She calls the same scene, left. I got several phone calls right after from the phone book, her screaming so bad you couldn't even understand her. The next time I saw her was like at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
And what happened at that point?
So we left. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. We got back. I walked into my house. There's change and glass and blood all over my house. My dogs are gone.
So you left with Jan. When you came back, you found your house ransacked and your dog's gone.
Windows broke out everywhere.
And what did you do?
I looked around. The back door was open. When I walked back in the living room, she was already beating on the door then. And
Beating on the door with her hand?
Yeah, on the front door.
Okay.
Screaming. Jan started crying, got scared, went upstairs and hid. I opened the door. She pushed by. Threatened, ranting, raving, going to kill her. She went into the kitchen, seen the back door open. It's like, well, the fat left. It's a good thing. Started going through the house. I took her by the arms, took her out to her van, told her if she didn't get away and stop it, I was calling the police. I turned to walk away and heard her engine rev, turned around, and she was backing through the yard trying to run over me.
No, I was not.
Did you hear what I said?
But
Did you hear what I said?
Hey, he's lying.
Did you hear what I said? Go ahead.
She
And
pulled
what
out
did
and left after that.
She left.
Yep.
And that leaves you and Jan in the house.
Right.
And what did you do at that point?
At that point, I told Jan, I said, come on, I'm taking you home. We got in my car, went to pull out, and I see her van coming down the street. I turned, went around the block up towards Weber to leave. She came up and ran me into the curb, cutting me off.
No, I did not. Miss Patterson, do you have a short attention span or what?
Ma'am,
I told you.
But he keeps lying.
Just a second. That's for me to determine. And I will allow you to answer his testimony in a certain order. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
I woke up to them. She wasn't sitting on the couch and he wasn't doing what he said he's doing. They were together, kissing, making out, okay?
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Audra Patterson claims former lover, Charles Summerfield, assaulted her after she caught him with another woman.
All right, so she rammed you into the curb.
She's got a brand new Aerostar van. I couldn't elude her. While she was crossways in the street, I backed into an alley, went up an alley, another alley, turned on the street and started to take Jan home. I looked back and her van was coming. As I went up an alley, she rear-ended me 3 times, pushing my car. Finally get up close to the end of the alley where the street meets. I lock up the brakes. She stops. I get out of my car. She got out of her van, ran around kicking my van, she's going to kill Jan. I pushed her away. She ran back to her van. I'm fine. While I was trying to get my key into my car, she hits my car again. And she pushes it so far out into the street that a semi has to lock up. Now, this is 3:30 in the morning. Has to lock up the brakes. Jan is locked in the car. By the time I look up, her van, my car is gone and her van's right in front of me. I opened the door, tried to turn off the ignition to stop her.
So you went up to her car?
No. Her car, by that time, she'd pushed my car so far that her van was right in front of me, her door.
But you went to her car to try to turn off her car keys?
All I had to do was reach out and open the door.
Okay, and that's when, according to you, there was a scuffle and you did, in fact, punch her.
She got hit in the mouth, no denying that.
Okay.
I didn't punch her on purpose. I didn't drag her out of the van. I got in my car, I left, and I took Jan home.
Okay. And that at some point you were seen by the police? Was that the next day?
The next morning, I was woken by the police. They told me she had pressed a charge for me for beating her down in the street. And he looked at the house, and it's like, what's going on? And I told him, I came home just like I told you. The house was a shams. My dogs still aren't there.
Did you get your dogs back?
Yeah, I had to go to her house and make up with her when I got out of jail to get my dogs back.
So she had, in fact, taken your dogs?
Absolutely.
And the dogs were in her house?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions for you, Miss Patterson. Let's start with the dogs. That's the last. Shh. I haven't asked you a question yet. How did his dogs get into your house?
Well, first of all, they wasn't just his dog. The
How did
dog was
the
my
two?
dog.
Listen to me.
I took them.
Okay. Where were they when you took the dogs? Were they at home or were they not at home?
No, they were out partying, having a good old time.
Okay, so that there is something more to the story that you told me on your direct examination than what really happened that night. You did, in fact, go back to his house. You didn't tell me that. So you went back to his house, and when you went back to his house, I assume, want me to believe that you went back to his house for the sole purpose of taking the 2 dogs.
No, that wasn't the reason to talk to him.
Okay, well,
we
he
lived
wasn't.
together
Listen
for
to me.
7 years, ma'am.
Listen to me. He wasn't there. So you went back to talk to him, and he wasn't there. So you decided to take the 2 dogs.
And other things.
Okay. What other things did you take? Look at me. What other things did you take?
Just something personal of his that I knew he'd want back.
What?
Some pot.
Okay. So you took his dogs and you took some marijuana, right? And other than that, you took nothing. You just left the house. You took the 2 dogs and you took the marijuana and you left the house.
I knew that way he told me.
Just a second. You took the 2 dogs and you drove them to your house and you dropped them off.
Yeah.
Then at some point you went back to his house, right? You have the dogs in your house. You have the pot in your house, right? And then you went back to his house. Had you called him first?
Yeah.
How many times had you called him?
I didn't really call for him. I called to tell my girlfriend she needed to come home.
Okay, because you wanted to talk to her.
Right. I mean, that's no kind of friend to go off with. I mean, I woke up to them. She wasn't sitting on the couch and he wasn't doing what he said he's doing. They were together, kissing, making out, okay?
Oh, okay.
He
So
don't even
whatever,
work. He wasn't in a van. He was in a car. I didn't hit his car. Okay. He came back to my van and almost drugged me out of my van. I mean, I've got the picture to prove the bruises and everything on my arm and everything. Well, he tried to kill me almost.
Listen to me, madam. I'm talking to you. You're looking at him. You're not looking at me. At some point, you went back to his house after the dogs are in your house, and he was pulling out of the driveway with Jan in his car. And according to you, you were just following them.
Right.
And you didn't touch his car with your van.
Ma'am,
no,
I had
the
No, I
answer is
didn't. No,
you
I
did
didn't.
not. So you were just following them. Now, at some point, both cars must have stopped, right?
He had to stop for a stop sign because there was a truck in front of him, ma'am,
Oh,
okay?
okay.
I have a brand new van. I'm not going to hit his piece of junk car.
Listen, not if you're sober.
I wasn't drinking this time.
not if
I
you're
was drinking
sober.
earlier that day. This was at 3 o'clock in the morning, like he did say. I did not, I mean, I wasn't drunk still then. I wasn't.
Now, so you stopped at a stop sign, and he's in front of you.
And a truck's in front of him.
And a truck's in front of him.
So he had to stop. He couldn't go nowhere.
Just a second. So you want me to believe that he got out of his car at that point, and there had been no problem. You hadn't been following him in and out of alleys and bumping his car and trying to cut him off. He just got out of his car, came up to your car, and punched you in the mouth. Is that what you want me to believe?
Yeah.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
She makes threats against my life, Jan's life.
You mean you have recordings of that night?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to hear them.
It's pretty explicit.
I'm over 18.
Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. Audra Patterson says ex-boyfriend Charles Summerfield punched her in the face. Charles says she broke into his home, destroyed his property, and had him arrested.
Can I see the reports on your car, et cetera, sir?
I didn't get an estimate on the car. After I'd gotten out of jail, she'd apologized. You know, we've been through a lot, all of this, and she gave me back my belongings, which consist of rings, anything she could find at the house.
I didn't
But
take nothing but what I said, ma'am.
So you didn't have any estimates on your car?
No, I didn't. I had a burglary report made on her.
Let me see it. Let me see the police reports, please.
That's the report I made, and the arresting officer.
I want to see
talked
what the
neighbors.
I want to see what the arresting officer had to say.
And Your Honor, I have
You had.
a recording of messages left on my machine
That
while
night?
I was gone, and yeah.
That night?
That night, that'll verify that this went on, and she makes threats against my life, Jan's life.
You mean you have recordings of that night?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to hear them.
It's pretty explicit.
I'm over 18. Could you
All
bring
right.
that up here?
If you listen to it all, you will get all of it, saying that she was going to knock my windows out. Later on, she did knock my windows out.
We knock out windows.
Pretty self-explanatory.
You have an estimate, sir, on the damage that was done to your home?
I have replacement windows.
Let me just see the estimates that you have.
I bought a bunch of glass at the time, the ones
Ma'am, he has a house he's refinishing. This is what split us up because he couldn't get a job and he was redoing this house. And he was making windows for that house that he had glasses for. So that's what that receipt's all about.
Some of them are, Your Honor. But she
all of them
nevertheless,
are.
she knocked both windows out of my back screen door.
Sir, I want you to tell me how much was the cost to replace the damage that she did to the windows in your house? Do you understand? Don't give me the whole kitchen sink.
All right, I replaced the windows and fixed the doors myself. The only thing I have cost for is the price of the windows.
How much
damage
was that?
I haven't. It was only like $25, $30 or something for the glass.
Listen to me, Mr. Summerfield.
Yes, ma'am.
What other actual expenses did you have that evening as a result of what she did in your home and having you arrested? Did you pay to have your car fixed?
No, I haven't. I just got my car painted 5 days before this, though. And the only reason that I didn't go on to try to collect this money was that she dropped the charges on this assault and I dropped the burglary charges. And it was supposed to stop there.
And he was
All
supposed
I
to fix and do my medical
is
bills
her-
and fix my teeth.
I'd write off all money she owed me, anything, just stay out of my life.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
This court has to make a determination as to credibility. Credibility is the court's determination as to who is telling the truth, and that has a great deal to do with common sense and what the facts are. And the facts seem to me to be crystal clear that, Miss Patterson, you were drunk as a skunk that evening. I've listened to the tape. I've heard you on the tape. You were totally out of control. There isn't a question in my mind that you went back to his house and that you burglarized his house. You went into the house, you destroyed property, you took property from his home. The property was, in fact, found in your home, that is his 2 dogs. There isn't a question in my mind that you were still hot as fire when you saw him pulling out of the driveway with your friend Jan, that you not only followed them, but you followed them for the sole purpose of making trouble, which you did. And I find that if he tried to prevent you from causing further damage to both his property and or himself and the passenger in his car, he was justified. So I'm dismissing your complaint. On your counterclaim, sir, you have been able to establish, basically to my satisfaction, that the only out-of-pocket expenses that you had were $25 for glass. I'm telling you, Miss Patterson, that I am not awarding you a penny because you brought on this incident all by yourself. Case is dismissed, that's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And on the next Judge Judy.
I cared an awful lot for her. We was together 7 years. I raised her daughter for 7 years. We were a couple. I had a lot of feelings. Unfortunately, this killed it.
What do you expect? You wake up seeing your girlfriend on with your boyfriend. I mean, wouldn't you be a little outraged?
Denise is countersuing for the cost of their wedding rings.
Order. All rise. Your Honor, this is case number 349 on the calendar in the matter of Pretty versus Pretty. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat, please.
All right, this is actually a recall on a case that was done some time ago. Mr. Pretty, you were told to come back to court after you had received copies of the blood tests that were done on your child. You have a child together, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And these are complaints and cross-complaints. Your complaint, Mr. Pretty, was that you weren't sure that you were the father of this child, even though the 2 of you were married, because you were told by a relative that wasn't yours.
Yes.
Well, you have the results of the blood test?
Yes, ma'am. Says I am the father.
It sure does. 99.99% yours. So that your lawsuit for the reimbursement of medical expenses
as a result of the birth of this child. If you are not withdrawing it, I am dismissing it. You understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You are his father? Well, why don't you stand up here with him?
Sure. I do have one question.
Sure, I'll answer your question.
Now that I am proven that I'm the father, can I get my name? Can you order where I can get my name put on a birth certificate since I'm still not on there? I have no legal right to that kid.
First of all, you don't refer to your child as that kid.
But my child.
That's first. And your child has a name. Shelby, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
See how I remembered that? Okay. I assume you want his name on the birth certificate?
That would be fine.
Well, then all you have to do is go down to the records division, sign consents, and his name will be inserted on the birth certificate. When do you plan on doing that?
As soon as possible.
Within the next 5 days?
Yes.
Terrific. Then I will prepare such an agreed settlement, at least with regard to that issue. Along with that, sir, comes a lot of responsibility. How old are you?
22.
And how old is Shelby?
18 months.
And how old are you?
20.
You're her mother.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to your lawsuit now because his is dismissed. You are suing for back child support
Yes, ma'am.
and for money for wedding rings.
That's
Yes.
mine.
That's your lawsuit for the wedding rings. Well, let's take the wedding rings first.
Okay. The wedding rings were purchased on my account because neither one of them had enough credit available on an account to be able to purchase the wedding rings. I purchased them on my account.
Who asked you to do that?
Both of them did.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And what did you say to her?
I asked her if she would, because we wanted to get married and I didn't have the money for the rings, and I asked her if she would help us get them, and she said yes. So we went down, picked out a set, and got everything into her account.
Did you say that you would pay her back?
Yes, I did, and I made monthly payments starting in March through November, because we split up in December, right at the beginning of December, and I gave her back the ring, and I stopped making payments when we split up.
So you gave her back the ring?
Yes, I did.
And how much did you pay for them?
I paid, the rings total were $800 from the account. I paid $740 of that $800.
He says he made payments on these rings. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
$740?
No.
No.
How much?
Bottom line, $615.
And he gave the rings back?
Yeah, the rings are in safekeeping at the jewelry store.
Whatever. He gave the rings back.
Mm-hmm.
So the jeweler has $615, and you have the rings. Because if they're in safekeeping, you can always go get them back.
Correct.
For a mere $185. So it would have cost you $185
Yes.
for the rings. Right?
Yes.
Well, doesn't sound to me like he should pay any more than that.
Well, Your Honor, in respect to the amount, that's what was paid against the balance. They'd originally bought the wedding ring sets, and then 2 weeks later went back in again and exchanged the rings, so it was a higher amount. With both combined sets, it was $1,461. And then I've got down up to a balance of, I believe it was $533 with the interest that was charged. $533.53.
Yes.
I called the jewelry store. I've got the credit manager's name and number you can call. She has her account balance as of November 10th. There was only $391.11 because I called the jewelry store.
Who went back? I'm just questioning. Who went back and exchanged these rings because they didn't like them?
We did.
We did.
Why?
Because she was pregnant and her ring was turning it kind of green because the chemicals being pregnant.
Yes.
The gold was, so we had to upgrade it to higher quality of gold. And she wanted a bigger diamond.
Is that why you went back?
Just for a higher quality of gold.
And did you get a bigger diamond too?
No.
Just a higher quality of gold?
Yes.
On your ring?
Yes.
Did you have a ring too?
Yes.
Did you turn your ring back in?
No, ma'am.
So you just turned her ring back?
Yes.
So what do you want from him? You know, she has certain responsibility, right? Doesn't she have certain responsibility?
Yes.
So, did you pay any money towards these rings?
Yes, I did.
How much?
Probably 200 or so.
Well,
at best.
Yes, she
Down
did.
payment.
Because that was your arrangement with your mother, that the two of you would pay her back.
Yes.
Well, he paid his share. You pay yours. And you got the ring. So forget the ring.
Now let's get the child support. How much have you paid for child support?
I sent, when we split up and I moved down to Southern California, I sent her 2 checks of $100 apiece. And then I was going to keep sending her more money, and she called me up one day and she goes, I need diapers. Well, I didn't get paid for 3 more days. And I was like, okay, well, I'll have the diapers to you tonight, because my brother lives like 5 miles from our house. That wasn't good enough. She wanted the money. She kept talking to me about the money, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to keep sending you money. If it goes towards the kid, then you'd have took the diapers, not just the money. If it went towards Shelby, you would have took the diapers for my brother coming over later that night and brought them to you if you needed it that bad. And I wasn't sure if I wasn't the father at the time. I wasn't on the birth certificate, and I just said, that's it.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You say, Joshua D. Pretty got me pregnant. It's very hard to nail a moving object.
And later today,
I was not aware that it was fraud.
Well, of course you were aware that it was fraud. If you signed your house over to somebody that you don't know, that's fraudulent.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Joshua Pretty is suing his estranged wife, Denise Pretty, for their baby's medical bills. Denise is countersuing for child support and the cost of their wedding rings.
Have you taken this matter to the family court?
We've got a court, well, we had a court date. I got a continuance because I was waiting for the test for the paternity results.
Who filed the proceeding in the family court?
I did.
To be declared the father?
I filed for the divorce.
You filed for divorce?
Mm-hmm. And I got filed for a paternity test through the divorce, and once we got the test results back, then we'd file for custody.
And or visitation?
Or, yes.
And you've cross-claimed for support in that action?
Yes.
Good. So that action for divorce is going to take care of all of your issues of support?
Yes.
So let us see what we have resolved here today. Mm-hmm. We have resolved that you have no case, right?
Yes.
We have resolved that you have no case because he's paid his share of the rings. Now it's up to your daughter to pay for her share of the rings. Mm-hmm. Then there's the issue of child support. And the family court or your local superior court is going to deal with all issues of the marriage, including any maintenance, any child support, as well as the issue of paternity, which is clear-cut. Mm-hmm. But I suggest, Mr. Pretty, that you start saving your money. You understand that?
Yes,
Are you
ma'am.
working now?
Yes, I am. And I am saving my money.
Okay, because you are going to have to support this child. If two babies make a baby, then everybody suffers a little bit. Right, Mr. Pretty?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, that's true. I mean, because when I read your answer, I found something bizarre in your answer. You say, Joshua D. Pretty got me pregnant. You know, it's very hard to nail a moving object. Right? He didn't get you pregnant. This was
two of us.
The two of you. Okay. I assume that you're going to want to do the right thing and be part of this child's life. And the first thing that you have to do is stand in front of the mirror every morning for 10 minutes and say the words Shelby, 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 Shelby. Not the kid, the kid, the kid, the kid, the kid. And then I assume that you're going to want to do the responsible thing with regard to being a regular part of your daughter's life.
This right here proves to me that I am the father, and I'm not going to quit. I'm going to be that kid's father. Shelby's father.
Shelby.
I'm not going to give up. I'm going to be the best father I can to Shelby.
Okay.
My
You said it, and I assume that you, at this point, mean it, and it's going to take some effort. And
my father
as
was
angry
there for
as
me.
you might be with him, or as angry as you might be with each other at this moment, that's really totally irrelevant. You
Yes.
chose to have a baby with him, and it's not a good thing for your daughter to grow up without knowing that she has two parents who care about her. So you have to make it easy rather than difficult for him to visit with her. So try to be good parents. You didn't start out on the right foot, but you have a baby. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Thank you.
I'm glad that he finally found out the fact that he is the father, and I want him to realize the fact how hard it is to raise a child.
at least, you know, we know the truth, everything will work out. Her and I can work out most of the problems between us ourselves, I think.
And now the next case.
All parties on McDonald versus Page. Step forward, please.
37-year-old clerk recorder Gail McDonald is suing 42-year-old violinist Pamela Page for fraud. Gail claims Pamela signed her name to a deed to avoid foreclosure.
All right, let's start with the defendant, because that's really the problem here. Miss Page, according to these papers, you were in the process of losing your home in foreclosure, is that right?
That is correct.
And somebody told you that the way to hold off that foreclosure was to do what?
Meet this person at the courthouse and sign some papers and file.
No, come on. What they told you was, according to what I have here, is that if you signed your house over to somebody else, that would delay the foreclosure. Isn't that what they told you?
That was not revealed to me until we met the day, like...
Whatever. At some point, you went to the county clerk's office and signed your house over to somebody by the name of Gail McDonald, right? Miss Page, listen up here.
Yes.
That's what you did?
Yes, I did.
And you didn't know a Gail McDonald?
Did not.
So you just picked a name, Gail McDonald?
I did not pick the name.
Somebody else picked a name?
Yes.
And took your hand and wrote it on, and wrote it?
I did not write it.
You signed it?
I signed it.
So you signed your house over to a Gail McDonald, right?
Correct.
Who you didn't know?
Correct.
In order to really fraudulently delay this foreclosure on your house, right? Of course, right.
I was not aware that it was fraud.
Well, of course you were aware that it was fraud. If you signed your house over to somebody that you don't know, that's fraudulent.
It was not supposed to be for the full amount of my home.
I don't care whether it was for $1.
And it was
You picked a fictitious name in order to delay the bank from foreclosing on your house.
I did not pick the name.
Hello?
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You know, you sound like an innocent.
I am innocent.
No, you're not. I am innocent.
Closed captioning, sponsored in part by Real Cases, Real People, Judge Judy. Gail McDonald claims Pamela Page signed Gail's name to a deed to avoid foreclosure.
Now, your name is Gail McDonald.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when for the first time did you find out that you had some trouble?
June 2nd, I received a declaration from the lending institution stating that Mrs. Page here had deeded her property to Gail McDonald on May 26th.
Just a second, you said, aha, I'm a homeowner.
Exactly. Until I read through the contents of it and learned that it was an improper transfer and that Pamela Page here has a history of filing bankruptcy. She had, over the 2-year period, she had filed bankruptcy 4 times. I had filed bankruptcy in May. My bankruptcy was filed May the 12th. My bankruptcy did her good because her home fell under the protection of the bankruptcy court at the time of foreclosure, so the banks aren't able to foreclose on her property because I am now the owner. The banks came after me.
Oh, so this wasn't just any name that was picked out. This name was picked out because she had already filed for protection under the bankruptcy laws. Isn't that right, Miss Page?
This is what I've been told, yes.
This is what I've been told. You know, you sound like an innocent.
I am innocent.
No, you're not. I am innocent. All right, so let me hear what you had to go through as a result of this fraud.
Well, first of all, Your Honor, during this time, I had foot surgery on both feet. I had surgery on 3 toes. I had stitches in them. It wasn't even a week after I had the surgery. I immediately called my sister here and told her, you know, I don't know what to do. But it had asked any parties wishing to be there on the June 4th hearing that I had to be here. I looked at the very last page that listed me as a transferee. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this because the Linden Institution is now considering me as the transferee in this matter. I talked to my sister. We found an attorney at the last minute. I had to hire a real estate attorney, someone who knew the language about this matter at the very last minute. In 2 days, show up in San Jose, more than 60 miles from my home, drive myself with stitches in my foot, pay the attorney at the time of the hearing.
How much did you pay the attorney?
I had to, at that time, show up with at least $600. I gave her a $100 deposit, and my sister wrote the check for the other $500.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. We tried to make sense of the matter. My attorney and I tried to make sense of the matter after her hearing. It was a dismissal, and my attorney tried to speak up on my behalf. Your Honor, Ms. McDonald has been drugged into this matter. Her name is not cleared in this matter. But anyway, the judge just said that she has that right to have her case dismissed. And if my attorney wanted to set a motion, she had to do it in another court. When we walked outside,
just a second. So the court dismissed her case.
Didn't dismiss her.
But didn't dismiss your case.
No, the attorney did not. I mean, the judge did, and my attorney tried to talk to her attorney, and her attorney walked away from us. And you know I'm telling the truth. You guys walked away from us.
Look at me.
They walked away from us, and they said, "We did it. We did it." That's exactly what they did. And my attorney was still trying to talk to her attorney, and they just left us standing there.
You mean they did it?
They succeeded.
The house was not foreclosed.
The house was not foreclosed, and she was able to save her house. My attorney then had to write a demand letter on her, make a demand letter on her bank. The response we got back from the bank is saying that Pamela Page is the culprit. They put the blame back on her.
I don't need a bank to tell me that.
Judge Judy is ready to rule. Want justice? Call 1-888-800-JUDY. On the internet, judgejudy.com.
How many letters and
my attorney wrote a letter
correspondence did your attorney have to?
My attorney wrote a letter to the U.S. bankruptcy trustee officer informing them about this scam. I contact the FBI. I contact Attorney General office. They told me that this scam was operating in Los Angeles, and it has somehow moved its way to Northern California, and I had got caught in the middle of it. But it was nothing no one could do. I didn't have the money to take her house, because I would love to have your house.
Do you still have your house, Ms. Page?
Yes, I do.
Good. Judgment in this case is for the plaintiff in the amount of $5,000. Now you can do.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And on the next Judge Judy.
I'm an innocent party as much as she is.
She benefited from this.
I was not part of a scam. I was taken advantage of. I can't get my home back because it's in somebody else's name that I don't know.
Now that justice is served, I feel better about that.
ਇੱਥੇ ਭਾਈ ਨਾਲ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਆਵੇ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਜਾਵੇ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਤੇ ਰੋਕ ਲੈ ਤੇ ਸਭ ਕਿਤੇ ਰੋਕੀ ਆ ਚਲਾ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਜੋ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਡਾਂਸ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਆ ਉਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਆ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਵਾ ਉਹ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਾਤੇ 'ਚ ਪੈਸੇ ਦੇ ਗਏ ਉੱਥੇ ओए इसने मैंने लिखा के दिया क्या हम तो फेरे का तो फेरे में मोड़ रहे अरे बोलिए आगे बिल्कुल मैंने
Sources here. इसकी नो से हमारे पास नहीं आया उठा दो
मेरे पास है देख क्या ये पावर आई है पावर ऐसे यहाँ से खड़ी होती करके या अपना ले लूँगा ले लूंगा ना मैं मार नहीं सकता
मार इसको किल चला जाएगी चला किल जाएगी मैं मारता तलवार अच्छा फैन डाल ली शैम्पू डाल ली कंडीशन नहीं डाल रही बोल तुझे क्या कल कहते पक्खा बंद करे
कौन है सही है उन्होंने कहना ही उन्होंने
वर्कर के तुम्हें वो करूँ और वो
बच्चे बच्चे
बाकी बुला रहे अच्छा नाच का आज ना मेरा खड़ के ठोक मार के दौड़ कर गई ये मैं एक बंदा मार आता है और क्या बुला तो मैंने के कंप्यूटर से है आजकल लेवल आज सब बड़े ना है अभी बड़े हो चुके हैं इसके लिए और फिर कर दिया अब चलना इसको कोट दिया और बटर पा देना जा करा के पीला तो तू है मेरे अगलों के पास कितनी बेइज्जती में और भूल गैप हो जाती है लाजा बहुत कितना केस किया मुझे उससे अरेस्ट
मेरा पैर सो गया ये
मारने का मैंने 20 दिया क्या जाती किया वो तूने जो पास ला के दिया इसके पास ला के दिया तो
तीन मैंने सबको किल कर डाला मैं 30 किल किए हैं अभी तो
तो बोल देने रहे एक मिनट में क्या बात अभी आ रहा है खबर और वो मुझे निकाल दे ये जो तुमने निकाला वो हिसाब बंदे इसमें वो बल्कि इतने वो तो कल खबर इस बात में तो तुम जितना चले और यहाँ जाते हैं तो सामने पड़े फिर अभी देखी मैंने
इधर में भजानी लगी मेरे इधर में भजानी लगी मैं भजा लांगा इन्हों
उन्हें बड़ा चाप है या
तो की करा फूल दवा
मक्खियां में स्पैग पीला भी नहीं होते
एक मिनट
लगल आ गए तो पीन
छोड़े ना चलो खड़े ओ आ जाओ इधर को मेरी तरफ को आओ मेरी तरफ को इधर को आओ इधर को नंबर 1 आ जाओ 2 बंदे हैं नंबर 1 इसको जाओ तुम
kill.
गोलियां खत्म ना होती आज तो मैं तुमको बताता।
Killing spree.
कैसे चले हुण सती चले चाचू मैनू दे जा